All right. Well, I do believe we are now live. I can see myself on the internet, and that means that is indeed the case. Welcome to the show, everybody. You know, one day I'll actually get a starting soon screen so we can have a proper intro. But until then, you just get us appearing out of nowhere when you least expect it. And today we have a very exciting topic and a very exciting area of discussion and a very important one. Don't worry. I know a lot of you guys are going to think, are you guys really going to be talking about weapon swapping out of combat for another 6 hours? No, do not worry, my friends. That will only be the catalyst for a broader discussion around the same topic. And that topic is specifically the way that different areas of the Guild Wars 2 community interacts with itself and some of the slightly negative consequences that can come by this degree of separation and lack of understanding between these groups. Definitely in both directions there as well, so don't worry about that. But before we get into that, welcome to the show, to our wonderful, wonderful guest. Returning is Brazil. He's going to be causing trouble throughout this entire one. I can already see it happening right now. And then up in the top half of the screen, we have Snebzor and long-returning TeaTime guest. It is Jebro. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Boom. There it is. So, we might as well just leap right into it, okay? I'm going to build a bit of a too long didn't read summary here. There has been a little bit of a change to the game recently, specifically affecting player versus environment stuff and world versus world. So, what happened? So, ArenaNet changed swapping your build to, instead of just do nothing, basically you can just change it whenever you want. Something happens if you change something that's deemed to be a little bit too extreme. In particular, this was, whenever you change a trait or a skill right now, then it's going to completely reset your character, removing all your boons, all of your effects, right, and all that sort of thing there as well, which is obviously quite an impactful change. So what did this mean? Well, it turns out that doing this was actually a really core component of speedrunning, right? And certain techniques, particularly in dungeons and fractals and also even high-level raiding, actually utilize this mechanic quite a lot. And removing it actually makes the game significantly more annoying to play for some of these players, which is obviously not quite ideal. Now, however, what really went wrong here is that normally you'd have a nice civil discussion addressing this issue and go, oh, okay, right, I understand that. What happened was, because this was actually interlinked with another pretty contentious topic, that of precasting, right? Players got very, very angry because they thought that people were upset with precasting being removed when in fact they weren't, and precasting didn't get removed anyway. Additionally, people think that precasting is really, really important, but actually it isn't, and it's a very, very minor thing, and in fact it slows most people down, and it's not actually even worth doing it. So people are mad at something that doesn't affect them, wasn't even good, didn't distort the game's balance, but they thought the exact opposite, right? And this is basically, I've now set the stage for the discussion. Basically, people had no idea what was going on. They had no idea what the change actually was, what it meant, who it affected, right? And as a result of that, everyone had a good old-fashioned few days long flame fest on the subreddit, and of course, any other social media involved. Anyone got any opening thoughts in that regard there?
Yeah, that reminds me of a quote from Fallout New Vegas. Too many people have opinions on things they know nothing about, and the more ignorant they are, the more opinions they have. Very good, and it comes from a video game. So it's... I have a lot of thoughts about this because this goes back forever in the dungeon speedrunning community. And in my humble opinion, this is coming from someone who was a hardcore dungeon speedrunner who absolutely loved that section of the game. I still like it. I still like soloing. Just get over it. Like, it's fine. It's not a big deal. Because we go back in time and we think of how many things they've actually taken away and they fixed. And also there are things that aren't fixed that people just don't do anymore. You can still exploit and jump to Lupicus and a Raw Path 2, but nobody does it anymore because nobody cares. You can still run over the boat and avoid all the mobs as far as I know, but nobody cares because it's faster just not to do that. And They took away script bottles, which script bottles are the most heinous example of a consumable, because they would just do like a flat 15% damage of the maximum HP of a target. So you could kill Lupikas faster than you could one-shot him with Reflex. They took that away. They took away like the rocks that you would throw to break CC bars. Like they've taken stuff away, and for some reason, like people have gotten like slightly frustrated over it. But I guess the response has been, "Oh, I guess it's fine. It was an exploit. It was dumb." But with this one, this is just weird because they did some change that was similar a little while ago, and like you have people like Grimjack saying we're quitting the game, like done. This is I'm not specifically meaning to call Grimjack out. I'm just using him as an example, and it's just not a big deal. It's like they've taken things away from speedrunning people, the speedrunning community, that have been far greater than this, and it's just you just got to adapt to it. Speedrunning is about adaptation. Speedrunning is about figuring out the best way to do things given the circumstances. Speedrunning isn't about they patched this out of the game, now I quit and I go play another game where I've invested 20,000 hours into this game, but I'm so mad that I can't stack might and switch weapons anymore that I'm going to spend 20,000 hours in a new game and learn how to do it all over again. It's just a big case of like just get over it. It's fine. Just keep going.
Well, yeah, I mean that is definitely one side of the issue there, but I think the other side is what I kind of want to talk here a little about, and this is certainly that I think both Sneb and Jebro have perhaps a little bit more experience than a lot of the people who might be watching the stream, but also maybe a lot of the people here as well, because so there are two sides of this argument. And the first side is obviously is that, you know, if you know what the purpose of these mechanics are, it's very easy to say, well, this doesn't affect you in any way. But the trouble is there are a lot of people who don't understand this mechanic and feel a little bit threatened by stuff like this to an extent, right? When they see something that's really, really, you know, kind of pushed to the limit and optimized, I think people are a little bit worried that they might have to end up doing that as well, right? They might end up having to engage in some of these strategies and executional mechanics because they don't want to do that and they don't like that. But the thing is that I think the real disconnect here is the fact that, as Brazil said, it is irrelevant to a lot of these players. And in fact, a lot of these strategies and techniques would never be used, right, in a kind of a lower level environment. So I guess what I would ask to Sneb and Jeb, as it were, is can you give us some insight into why a lot of players might feel a little bit worried about seeing certain mechanics like this being abused, and kind of give us the other side of this picture here? Because whenever I tell people on my stream that, listen, guys, okay, people don't like this stuff, it worries them, everyone just bullies me and calls me an idiot. So I need you guys to do it for me. Let's go.
To call you an idiot and bully.
No, not that. Yeah.
Fuck you.
You just want all of us to do it. I honestly, like, I don't care about it. Like, I actually don't care. Like, the thing is that, and I think there is this extreme view of, you know what I do in raids. Bring what you want, play what you want. We're essentially there to have a laugh. 10 people chilling out. Whatever, I don't care. Like, we can kill a thing, we don't kill a thing. That's fine. But all you got to do is know who you want to play with. If you want to be a hardcore speedrunner, play with the hardcore speedrunners. If you want to play with the people who want to train you in raids, play with the people who want to train you in raids. If you want to have a laugh on a Friday night and just hang out and do the things, do that. Like, just play with the community you want to play with. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, like, just do what you bloody enjoy. Like, I think it's about as easy as that, isn't it? I mean, I'm not sure. I can kind of understand what people. There's this whole view about hardcore gaming and what it does to gaming and the ethos and the communities that exist within MMORPGs. MMORPGs are their own world. It's literally an open world. You can't expect to encounter the same people everywhere. It's just not realistic. It's important to engage. It's not, well, you don't have to engage the people in the hardcore community, but I think, it's important to respect and understand their experience and what they want to do and enjoy. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think, it works the other way around, and I think maybe that's the problem. Like, hardcore players maybe don't understand the more casual play style, and like, which is what Teapot's saying you do, and then you kind of get flamed for it in a memeful way, I would say, probably on your channel. And then in the other way around, maybe the same thing, like, don't understand it. Like, why would you want to play it that way? Whereas I understand both sides because I've definitely been in that way. I used to hardcore raid back in the day. I like PvP. I like to get pretty, I get pretty salty. I get pretty keen in that game mode. And I would say that I can, get a little bit more hardcore in that section of the game. But I think it's just, understanding each other's experiences and just giving people a little bit of leeway. And people like to do the hardcore speed running shit. Like, that's fine. That's their jam. There's a whole speed running community on Twitch. There's a whole massive, community to do, like, raising money for charity, for God's sake, around speed running. That's not toxic. I think it's just, how you look at different communities within the game and just think, that's different. I don't like it. Okay, cool. That's just it.
Yeah, okay. And I think that's definitely valid. I'd be very much inclined to agree with that. But then why do you think there was such a massive conflict over this disagreement, this change that happened in the game? That, because as you're quite right in saying this, if you don't want to play with people who do this stuff, then don't play with people who do this stuff. But there was still a huge drama. There were multiple just bloodbath Reddit threads about this. Like the entire, my YouTube comment section, a battlefield, the casualties on both sides, right? Speedrunning tactics and numbers being thrown at each other like axes, right? It was a massacre everywhere. It was bloody, right? So why did this happen exactly? What exactly went wrong here?
Is any of it relevant as well, where the fact, like, what you said was right, it essentially doesn't actually matter, like most of this stuff.
I think it's the perception, though, right? I think Preston kind of alluded to this, but I believe that it's a fundamental misunderstanding of the harm principle. The harm principle being, as long as it doesn't harm anyone, it's probably okay. So they think that this is an exploit. They think that there's some advantage that people gain by using this, whether it be gold or getting a CM or something like that. And so I think the casual player base looks at this and goes, there must be something that these players are gaining that I don't get. Therefore, it's harming me and must be stopped. That's what I think.
Which you think it's like a loss thing? Like, they're just like...
Yeah, they think they're missing out on something or losing something. They think they're being harmed, even if it's indirectly, because these players are gaining some kind of advantage. Really, what it comes down to is they're completely misunderstanding it, right? They think or have this perception that this is going on, when in reality, it's not doing very much at all. If you look at other games have this sort of thing too. Like OSRS, prayer flicking. Are you familiar with what prayer flicking is in old school RuneScape?
Yeah.
So you press this button, and if you do it in a certain amount of time, your prayer doesn't drain, which means you don't have to use prayer potions to regenerate this thing, or you don't have to go to an altar. It's a massive time save. Like, it's a huge advantage. This was something that was completely unintended in the game, but has become a fundamental component of skill now. And so they've actually adapted a lot of boss fights and things around prayer flicking. I don't think people go, oh, prayer flicking is like the biggest exploit ever and it needs to be stopped. I think people actually encourage it now and want people to learn it. But for some reason in the Guild Wars 2 community, when we have things that are sort of akin to prayer flicking, we want to stop them. I think because the casual player thinks this is something that's either unattainable for them, I think both actually. It's unattainable for them, and they think other players are gaining some sort of massive advantage because of it.
I don't know. I'm wondering. I feel like there's. I feel like it's a little bit. It sounds like it's a little bit like that, but it feels like it's a little bit more than that. Like, not jealousy specifically, but like this has been a big thing in games for ages. WoW is like a big, massive example of toxic, hardcore community versus casual community. That's been around since launch. Like Classic, it got accentuated more. But just this big beast of hardcore play versus like people wanting to play just the way they want to play. But that's what hardcore peeps are doing as well, right? They're just playing the game they want to play. It's just like I think it's something to do with kind of what Sneb's saying. I think it's maybe like this is the right way and this is the best way to do a thing, and people want to do it just completely differently and maybe feel inadequate about that perhaps as well. And I wonder if that's something to do with it. Whereas like I don't really care how I kill a thing as long as it dies. But if I wanted to kill it in the most efficient way with a group of people, I would go and look at a guide. You know, I'd go to like, you know, a website and have a look at a guide. I'd look at, you know, Teapot's guide or Mucklark's guide, or like go to one of the speed running websites and, you know, get a build and try and like up my DPS and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I think it's just, you know, mindset of a lot of people as well. And
Could I?
don't
like,
people have
oh,
to be
sorry.
angry
Go ahead.
for shit, to be honest. I'm just like, why don't you let people get on with the way they want to play the damn game at the end of the day? But, you know, I don't know.
So if I could jump back into this too, I think another thing that plays into this is that I think we've talked about this before, is that there's not really any kind of metric to tell you that you're not doing good at the game unless you have installed third-party add-ons. And believe me, if you see some of the gear that people use just out in the open world, or even sometimes in raids, it would probably make you question a lot of stuff. And so you have people that want to do this is a great example. I did strike missions the other day, and there was someone that said, "Hey, I have like 9 bone skinner tokens, but I lost my other stat. Can you come in the group?" I was leading it. I said, "I don't believe you, but that's fine. I don't care." And they did super low DPS. They were playing a soul beast. They were like less DPS than me on Plague Doctor Scourge, and who cares? Like, I was happy to have them in the group. They didn't feed to the mechanics the whole time, and it was relatively fine. And then whenever it was over, I just asked them, I was like, "What's up? Like, you need any advice, help? Like, are you new?" And they didn't really want anything, and they just kind of went on their way. But they asked if their DPS was good, and I said no, it wasn't. And so that runs into a situation where you have people that want to do in-game harder content like raids or like strike missions or like fractals, and the only metric that matters to people is DPS. It doesn't matter that on Bone Skinner Pugs I can full 9-man res 3 to 5 times in the same instance, and we kill Bone Skinner in like 10 minutes. If they have top DPS, that's all that matters. People think Guild Wars 2 is all about DPS. They think there's nothing to the game other than that. And so there's just this huge divide between, first of all, people that know what they're doing and people that don't know what they're doing, and people that they make their own build and that's what they want to do. They play the game, they want to go through, level up, do all the stuff, learn their class, make their own build. They go into a raid, they do terrible DPS. Well, DPS is the only thing that matters apparently. And so they just get told, "Hey, you suck, get out of the group, like learn to play noob." And that's what they hear. It's by far the worst in T4 CM fractal groups. CM fractal groups, they want like 50,000 kill proof at this point, and they will completely. It's the equivalent of like getting Omega lulled in the Twitch chat, and they want to pre-stack everything and reset all the cooldowns and then jump right in. But I have this I have this thing I'm going to link in chat real fast. Some of you, I imagine, are new and probably haven't seen this, but I think this is a really good resource for everyone who wants to learn about Guild Wars 2. It's called "The Meta is a Lie" Part 3. And it's worth a watch, and so are the other two. It's a little bit outdated, but the principles still stand. Where one of the main points in that video is that it's just like pre-stacking. People think that pre-stacking takes skill, first of all, when pre-stacking is pressing a firebrand mantra 3 times and using Empower and making a fire field and blasting it. There's no skill involved in that. It doesn't take skill. I'm sorry, but you're delusional if you think pre-stacking takes skill. It doesn't. And it's just a waste of time. You could just jump into the fight. You could have all the buffs it want. Like, it's fine. Pre-tech, it doesn't take skill. I'm sorry, Deaf Mute 2. It doesn't take any skill at all. But the divide and the focus on DPS above everything else, it's just a mess. And I really think that people that are kind of in the middle between the two sides, I think they really need to make an effort to reach out to people that are a little bit lost or a little bit new. I think that if I want the community to be in a better place, I think everyone here does, and I try to take it upon myself a little bit to try and make it a little bit better whenever I play with it, and I think we all do. I think that everyone in chat, if that's what you want to do, then do it. And I think another facet of like the whole drama was that, like it or not, the guilds like Snowcrows and Quantify and whatever, they do a shit ton of research into min-maxing and optimization, and if they have something that's taken away from them that they really love after things have been, consistently taken away from them a little at a time, maybe it was just the last straw. And I think ArenaNet might need to consider that if they push a little bit too hard, they might lose those resources, and those resources are valuable to the player base because people want to know how to do the most DPS. They need to realize it's not the most important thing, but I think it was smart for ArenaNet to address it, talk about it, compromise a little bit. And I think it's good to have the resources. I just don't think that DPS and, thinking that you're carrying just because you have the highest damage, I think that's just a poisonous mindset to have, honestly.
I think to kind of to bounce off that point as well, like the core issue, it was something you were talking about with, DPS versus heal Scourge, for example. The really fundamental thing that certainly caused this massive drama was absolutely the fact that I think most players don't understand what the most important things are in winning, essentially. Most players don't realize that how good protection is. Most people don't realize how good having 25 might is. Most players don't realize how good having perma quickness is or perma regen. They don't realize how good it is to be able to revive, and reviving is really important. And the other side of this is that they overvalue things that aren't actually very important. And in this case, it's pre-stacking. Pre-stacking is insanely overvalued. Great example is actually, I did this on stream the other day to kind of demonstrate this fact. So a lot of players in Guild Wars 2 really, really, really hate pre-stacking, okay? And they shouldn't, actually, because it doesn't really do anything. In fact, a lot of the time, it's a waste of time. Like, if you're pre-stacking in a fractal run, so just to kind of give some context, pre-stacking in a fractal run typically looks like this. Your Firebrand is going to use all their mantras, use all their boon abilities, use all the tomes, and then resort all of their cooldowns using a Mistlock Singularity, right? That's typically what pre-stacking does. And you'll do this before every single boss, which typically has a Singularity before it. This is a fractal-only mechanic, right? Like, only fractals have this cooldown reset with a Singularity. This is not something that you'll find in raids or dungeons, for example. So, but this is basically where 99% of players experience pre-stacking. Now, one, this hasn't actually been removed whatsoever from the game, funnily enough, with this change, which a lot of players thought it did. But secondly, this is actually a huge time loss, right? This is a massive time loss. So I did two Nightmare Fractal Challenge mode runs with the same group, the exact same players, and the same composition, right? And in one run, we pre-stacked between every single boss, and in another run we just ran through, right? We just we didn't ever GG, didn't ever reset, right? We didn't ever pre-stack, and it turns out that we saved 30 seconds by not pre-stacking, right? So this means that if you've been pre-stacking every single day in every single fractal in your daily tier 4s, you have honestly thrown away hours, right? Like you have wasted hours of your time using skills before a fight for absolutely no reason. Right? So in other words, the very thing that a lot of players are big mad about is something that they shouldn't be doing anyway, right? And this is where I think you have this really big issue. People do this because they see it in speakers. Why do people do this? Okay, and this is where you have this communication issue, which I think is actually something that the hardcore players should do better, because as far as I'm aware, I don't think this has ever actually been explained correctly. And funnily enough, I'm working on a video to try and hopefully explain this. Is I don't think players actually understand what pre-stacking is for. Pre-stacking is essentially for eliminating the ramp-up time in obtaining boons at the start of a fight, right? That's what it's for. It's so you can go into the fight with max boons instead of waiting the few seconds at the start of the fight to get boons. For example, if you're playing in, let's say, a raid, right? Like, we've all been there. You've got your firebrands, you've got your chronos, you've got your druid, all that sort of fantastic stuff. Okay, so what do? Like, you can't pre-stack in a raid, right? But you go into the raid, but does it take like half a minute, right, to get full boons? No, of course not. Like, your druid just bam, celestial avatar, chronos, boom, quickness, firebrands, bam, quickness. You'll actually have these full boons within like 5 seconds tops, right? Like within 5 seconds, you're going to be like, okay, we're boon. And that's what pre-stacking targets. Pre-stacking is optimizing away those first 2 to 5 seconds of boon acquisition at the start. And as a result of that, it's kind of a very, very minor, very extreme optimization. And implied within that statement, what a lot of people don't realize is that pre-stacking is only good under the assumption that you're doing it in a period of downtime that you can't avoid, right? Almost always, right? In other words, if the only reason you would really want to pre-stack to increase your efficiency is if you are doing it when you're being blocked from progressing, right? Otherwise, it's better just to run in and start the fight immediately, right? And why do people think that? Now, this is where it gets interesting, because when you actually see a lot of gameplay, these crazy speed kills, well, a lot of the time, you'll actually see individual boss kills, right? You won't see an entire fractal get done. You'll see a boss get killed really fast. Okay, you'll see one mob get bursted really, really quickly. And what does this mean? Well, it means that obviously in this situation, you don't care about overall efficiency, right? So in this case, you do pre-stack because you want to, you want to save as much time as you can on this individual segment. The problem is, though, is that people see this happening on this individual boss kill and they go, dude, these really good players are doing this. That means we need to do it every single time before every single boss. This is essentially a really big misapplication of this process. And again, I did at the start of the stream, so I don't want to talk about this specific issue in general because I think it's actually a very common issue across the board, right? Another thing I would point out would actually be in PvP, to kind of give another comparison here. It will be pushing far. A lot of players will watch good players in PvP, then you'll see them pushing the far node, right? And the thing is that a good player doing this is a good idea. You can get value out of this. But a lot of players don't really understand why these players are pushing the far node. And anyone who's ever played PvP will realize that, oh my goodness, why is he going far now? This is, what is happening here, right? Why, oh why are we doing this again? And I think the real big problem here, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it was just like a Lasai comment. It was like, I was just living that moment with you, my friend.
Yeah.
Here goes the slowest class in the game going far again. Please don't do that. That's not, you're looking at this Guardian who's not even got a staff or any ports or anything. And you're like, yeah, we're all dead now. Thanks, mate. And now you're going to get rolled. And that's, faux fire done. That's the game.
So,
that's literally the game.
Yeah, what I'm really getting at this rather long monologue here is that there are a lot of mechanics in Guild Wars 2 that are quite complicated and very situational, and a lot of players see a good player doing it and then apply it to their entire gameplay instead of realizing why that needs to happen. And you know what? Plot twist, guys. Right? I bet you guys were expecting me to say, you know what? These players are big dum-dums. You know what? I actually disagree. I think this is actually the fault, partially, right, of the hardcore scene for not explaining this to an extent. Right? Obviously, it's not like an obligation, right? Snow Crows or say rank 55, they're under no obligation to tell you why they're doing something or why you should or why you shouldn't do this mechanic. It's not like an obligation, but I think the reason why people don't understand this is because they see this gameplay and it's completely decontextualized and players simply do not have the ability to interpret this. So when they see this pre-stacking stuff, when they see, say, pushing far, right, or, you know, holding a 1v2, right, they don't understand exactly what's going on there, and they say, guys, I'm 1v2, well, you know, I died 1v2, I've been 1v2 the whole game, right, why haven't you won the map yet? Well, that's because that's not how it works, buddy, right, that's not quite good enough to win the game. You actually have to not die in the 1v2 to actually make it worthwhile. But anyway, you guys get the picture with this, right? The issue is that there aren't a lot of resources. I mean, this is probably a problem in every game, I imagine. There's always going to be mechanics that aren't fully understood by players who are learning the game. But I think in Guild Wars 2, this is particularly prominent because I think PvP is actually the best example of this. Maybe even World versus World. I think World versus World is an actually even better example of this. Like, where are the really big resources on how to actually play World versus World, for example, right? Like in a Zerg context, there are a few, like Reddish, for example, springs to mind, and Guild Wars 2 Mists.com is also a great resource for learning World versus World, but it's not like bam out there, right? It's not like this crazy big prevalent thing. I think a lot of players are just very disconnected from these resources and don't have it. Yeah, back in the day, of course, yeah.
They like, you remember those what was that main guild on NA called? They used to show their raids and they just used to, you know, run across servers on NA and EU. What are they called?
Well, like Red Guard or something?
Yeah.
Or do you want Team Aggression?
I think it was Red Guard, like back in the day. I remember when I'm pretty sure he used to do some stuff where people in his guild used to talk about things, different videos and stuff. Like when World v World was properly like pretty big, like there was some bits and pieces, but honestly, I think Reddish is like probably the only person who really talks solidly about that. Even PvP nowadays, there isn't many people who do that. They do it during their live gameplay. Like you have to go onto Twitch and talk to these people. Like Sneb talks a lot about in like raids and stuff he does. Like you do as well, obviously, when you're streaming your raids at times. But like I think there are people who do that, but they do it in more of a live environment, right? Like on Twitch. Rather than YouTube, maybe.
Yeah. I think this is kind of the core issue. We need to try and get these resources out there because ultimately this entire, well, the issue that shall not be brought up again was entirely avoidable, right? Like it was a simple misunderstanding between these two groups, and all of the friction came out of people just not speaking the same language, right? They were not actually understanding what's going on there. And so everyone hated each other. And everyone started flaming each other on the subreddit, which, while good content, probably not the best look for a new player. And just in general, probably not super productive for the community. Because ultimately, these two communities, like the more hardcore and more casual side, whatever you want to call it, I'm not really a big fan of these types of terms. I think they're so loaded, right? We need to come up with new words, really. But whatever you want to call it, like these two communities should be getting along with each other because ultimately they're on the same side and they benefit from each other, right? In the same way that, you know, you don't have a raid tournament or a PvP tournament without the hardcore players, you don't have anyone watching without the more casual players, right? So, you know, you do need these two groups of players and they can help each other in so many different ways. So we shouldn't hate each other. I'm just saying, guys, you know, make love, not war, right?
There is a significant lack of empathy between and just understanding between both sides. And it's funny because both sides really think that the other side is like really toxic, but they have a really hard time seeing their own toxicity. Like this has been a big topic for me on my streams lately. The word toxic is so diluted now, I don't even know what it means anymore. Because one person is saying like, you not letting me into your group is toxic. And then another person is saying, you coming into my group is toxic. And like, it just, what does toxic even mean anymore? And yeah. You have something to say?
What, you specifically? Or do you mean just general people?
Just in general, like okay. I just see toxic is thrown around so much that it like doesn't mean anything to me anymore. I've had people call me toxic because I've required people to have exotic gear to go in my raid trainings. And like I don't view that as toxic, so I don't know. I don't know.
Actually, because I think there is, and in our raids I literally say like you can bring whatever you want as long as you got gliding, you got heart thorns, like, and you're level 80 and you've got a set of gear, right? You're in there with us, we're just there for that reason. But I think if you state that reason and then it feels to them that you're gating like content to that person, that's the thing. You're stopping them, right, from doing a thing they want to do. and they don't take the responsibility on and say to themselves, well, you know what? This person wants to run it their way. And that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. You can run it your way. Like, go and find people who want to run it the way you want to run it. Like, who will allow you to join that group. There are people out there. There are people streaming it. I'm streaming it. There's other people doing it. And exotic gear isn't that difficult to get in the game, and that's cool. But like for new players, there are a lot of new players who just want to be like, what's raiding like? What's the best class? How do I get into raiding? And then you're like, well, you actually need to do a fair few things. You can't just get into the core game of Guild Wars 2 and do this thing. So I think that is the problem probably for people. They see you putting a gate in the way between them and doing a thing, but that's okay because that's you're trying to train people who have this gear, like, and that's fine. I don't like
the funniest part about that to me is essentially I'm saying the gate is to walk to the store so that you can buy the thing, and they're like, but that's horrible, right? Like, I don't want to walk to the store to get the thing. Well, because it's so easy to do what I'm telling people to do, and I even tell them how to do it. It actually, and I've tested it so that I know exactly how long it'll take. Maximum like 2 hours to do what I'm asking them to do.
Well,
how much does it cost? Have you told them the cost as well?
Oh yeah, I tell them the cost. 50 to 150 gold, depends. If they want to get into it right now, they can swipe that credit card for like $10 and boom, they can do whatever they want.
Really, even that much? Like, is it seriously?
Well, yeah,
that
to
much?
get a full, like, if you make a brand new account and you need to get a full set of exotic gear, I think the power, like Berserker said, is like 50 to 60 gold or something with all the sigils and runes and stuff. But then Vipers, which Condi is meta, right, on most fights. Vipers is pretty expensive because of the demand.
Nika's armor, like the medium,
you can get way less.
Yeah, the heavy and the light named armor, like Nika's armor, specifically the level 80 medium armor, comes with Berserker stats, and it also comes with like Eagle runes or a rune that are decent, and it's like around. I think some of the pieces are even less than a gold.
Like, yeah. It's the trinkets and crap that are kind of expensive, right?
Yeah, they're like 2 to 3 gold each.
Perfect, right? You're talking about like perfect set of gear.
Yeah,
like,
if you got all the correct runes and stuff, then it would be 50 to 60. I'm talking like if I give you a build that's on Snow Crows and I say just go get the exotic version of all of this, that's what it's gonna cost you, right?
We need to compromise them. We need a how to gear your meta build as cheaply as possible.
Yeah. Occasionally I tell people like some reasonable substitutes that are, a bit cheaper. That helps people get into it faster. But honestly, I view it as such a low bar, but people are really opposed to that. And it's kind of funny because lately there've been a lot of people coming from like World of Warcraft. In fact, I've taken like 5 or 6 ex-mythic raiders, and I've never really played WoW. So I don't have like a good conception of what those raids are like. But they come in, they're like, this is easy, right? They're like, you're telling me to go get this gear? Okay, right? They have no issue with it. It's the people that have played Guild Wars 2 for like years and years and years. They feel really entitled to be able to just walk into something. And that's just not how raids are designed. They're designed to be a little bit more challenging, to make you think about what your build is, to make you consider what your gear is. And that's okay. But for whatever reason, we're very conditioned. I even had a person yesterday come in and they were like, how much does it cost to get a set of Ascended armor? And I was like, I don't know, maybe like 30 gold a piece or something. And they're like, 180 gold? That's terrible. And I was like, are you kidding me? Because once you have that set, you may never have to buy another set of Ascended armor again. You can just stat swap that thing if you need to. Like, you're good. In WoW, all your gear is invalidated like every 6 months or whatever, right? And so like when people complain about this, I actually can't understand. It like I had the same set of Ascended armor for 6 years. The same Berserker set, and I used it for everything, and it was fine. And when I needed to, I stat swapped it. So I don't actually understand that level of like people saying, oh, like you're gatekeeping this, you're making this toxic because you're telling me I need to go out and do this thing. Like it's really such a low bar.
I think it's because nothing in the game is like this, right? You were talking about conditioning, but this is the only thing. Even fractals, honestly, aren't like this. Certainly not tier 4s. Challenge modes, yeah, a little bit. But tier 4 fractals are so easy, you can basically do whatever you want, right? As long as it's ascendant, right? It could be, yeah, and like, well, yeah, Brazil can definitely testify that because he's got very good eyesight. He can actually look at someone's gear and kind of tell the stats just by looking at it with his very good eyes. But anyway, like this is the really core thing. I think a lot of players, and this kind of goes into the conception of the meta, right? And what the meta game is as well. A lot of players do not like They do not like the idea that the game essentially implies a certain playstyle, right? They see Guild Wars 2 as play how you want, but the simple fact of the matter is that that's not actually entirely true, right? I mean, it is to an extent, obviously, and you can clear raids with more or less anything as long as you play well enough and keep trying and keep learning, kinda. But the problem is that if you're already inexperienced and you are new to raids, if you don't play a certain way, you are essentially increasing the difficulty level, right? Like, so, let's say you've got 2 new raid groups and you're going to have a crack at Veil Guardian. What do you guys think? And the chat, you guys can answer this. You guys can answer this for me right now, chat. What do you think it's going to be easier with? Is it going to be easier with 6 Scourges, right? And then 2 heal Ellies? Or do you think it's going to be easier with 6 Elementalists and then 2 heal Warriors, right? Like, what's going to be the easier group with the highest win rate out of these 2? I mean, I think it's not exactly going to be rocket science on who's going to win more often, particularly with new players, right? And I think this is where you have this friction point, like, because the game, it doesn't really matter what you play, right? With build or gear, traits, whatever, for open world, for the story, even for, honestly, dungeons and fractals. If you want any proof of this, you can actually look at a lot of there's a few new streamers who've been playing Guild Wars 2 recently. They've gone into these dungeons with green gear, right? With literal green gear, random abilities, basically, and they've been farming these dungeons, right? These dungeons have lost, right? They're so easy that you can beat them, even with no exotic gear, like not even max level, right? Like you can farm that shit easy peasy. But raids and some areas of fractals are not like this. Like if you don't go in with a certain approach, it's going to be significantly harder to do so. And the rest of the content is like this as well. For example, I did like a full tryhard dragon stand. We did it in 20 minutes, right? Whereas obviously with normal pugs, that might take, kind of 40 minutes, maybe even longer than that, right? Depending on how things go. And we did Torquatal the Sunless in 4 minutes as well. Okay, whereas normally it's going to take probably 10 minutes. Now, so it is the same everywhere. It's that it just doesn't affect your fail state. You'll probably get the same result no matter what everywhere. But in raids, you'll fail, or it will take you significantly longer to get the same result with this. I don't know. In my opinion, that's a pretty big. That is like the fundamental issue here, is that players don't like that, or don't understand why that's the case, or don't think that's the case there as well. But Brazil, take it away. Give me the juice.
I'm making an edit on the character name, but I want to post that one screenshot from that one time with that one person that was telling us to DP has hard, food check, and all that stuff. You remember that?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. That one. Yeah, I do. Yeah, you could post it.
I want to cut out like part of the name so people don't go look for them, because I realize that. But hold on, I'll post it in chat in a second.
And yeah, what Reader Geek here says is a really good point, and this is where things get a lot more complicated, because you're absolutely right. Does it matter if it's harder? No, as long as everyone is okay with that. And this is what Sneb was talking about. When Sneb's doing a training, he wants to win. He wants to get people through this content and help them learn that content. He wants to help them understand how endgame PvE works in Guild Wars 2, right? So if he says, right, we're going to actually try and play the game essentially correctly according to the way the game is implying we should be playing the game, then that is entirely up to him. And players get confused. They look at that and go like, oh, well, what are you trying to say here? Like, what's going on there? But all Sneb wants to do is he wants to make sure that they have the highest success rate in addition to creating this learning environment. There's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
So, but that's kind of like the core issue there as well.
Can I ask
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
want to comment on that
Oh,
quick.
yeah, go ahead. Jebro afterwards, yes? Okay, yeah. But
Okay, so I've been doing trainings like every day. And I had somebody come in yesterday and I kept saying, hey, if anyone is welcome to join this, these are the requirements. Don't bully your teammates. And exotic gear, level 80, you're gonna need like basic gliding. You're kind of good to go after that. You need a raid build and exotic gear relevant to that raid build, right? So Zerkers, Vipers, whatever. And somebody came in and they said, I have exotic armor and I'm level 80 and I'm Dragon Hunter. And I was like, okay, sweet. But then I noticed they were fairly new. And so I said, hey, can you actually ping your gear for me? And they said, okay. They pinged all their gear to me and they were running soldier's gear because they hadn't ever upgraded because there was no reason to, right? They just boosted there's no reason for them to upgrade their gear because they had no idea. They just thought, oh, this is the best gear. This is the gear I need. It's exotic, right? So I explained to them that this wasn't the correct gear, right? Like that the stats mattered. So I gave a brief run through. I said, well, power increases your strike damage, ferocity increases your critical damage, and precision increases your critical chance. And so if you're truly playing a DPS build, you need those stats. Soldier's gear actually makes you really inefficient and ineffective in this raid. Where I'm going with this is that a lot of times the at least the pug community, somebody like that will join and they'll be like, yeah, I'm hyped up, I'm ready, I want to try these raids. And then they just yeet them out of there, right? They just kick them. They say nothing to them. They just kick them. And so what that creates is this person goes, I don't even know what I did wrong. Like I had the gear, I went into the group, I said that I was DPS, I had the build that I got from Snow Crows. What's wrong? Like they don't get it, right? They don't see where they went wrong. And so every experience where someone has to be kicked or let go from a raid doesn't have to be a bad one. Being kicked doesn't have to be a bad experience. You can ask somebody, why did I get kicked? How do I get better? What do I need to do to improve? And if the person replies and is just a complete dick to you, then that's on them. Alternatively, if you are the person doing the kicking, you have the opportunity to make the community a better place by telling somebody what they need to do. And that's what I'm really advocating for right now. I said, hey, you're not ready yet, but this is what you need to do. These are the steps you need to take. I opened the TP. I went and said, this is how you filter the stats. This is what you need to look for. This is the gold you need to get. And you know what that player's doing? They went out, farmed some gold. They asked how they could farm some gold so that they could get the gear, and they're going to be ready next time. That is so huge in the raiding community, especially on NA right now. We have to advocate for these players who actually want to learn and communicate.
I've got the thing ready. But this is Sneb and Snebro. You both may have never seen this before. It actually probably is both of the first time for both of you to see this. I'm gonna link it in chat.
Which chat? Oh, right there.
Twitch chat. Teapot's Twitch chat. This is a classic. This screenshot was taken years ago. Like it's pretty old. But this is my favorite example of someone that I think is just very confused because they have runes that don't match. None of their stats match, really. They have rare runes. They have some exotic runes. They've got some ascended stuff with like infusions in it. But it's all just like a berserker's scepter on a condition damage build. We talked about that on stream the other day. But it's just an example of like what's happening, like what's going on. Like,
but that's not even their fault, right?
Probably isn't.
They jump into the game and everything is immediately accessible to them. And that's very much a good thing in some ways. But the issue is that when they make that leap, they can't because they have no knowledge of the game. It's like them going from elementary school math to Calc 3. Like they have no idea what's going on. They're just symbols everywhere.
How do you like translate this though? Like this text? Because I don't see that text as that bad. Is it bad?
Wait,
it's very bad.
There's absolutely no
Oh, not the
synergy.
text, the runes.
I mean, I know you're talking about the runes and everything else, but are you talking
Yeah.
about? Do you feel like the chat that they're saying is is a bit toxic because of their rune
I don't.
set?
Okay.
Well, they're saying
I don't
who
think
do-
it's toxic. I think that they are. I don't think it's toxic. I just think it's amusing personally. That's the
Yeah,
only.
it's
thing I
blind
think.
leading the blind. Like they just don't. They're saying DPS hard, but they have no DPS. And when they say switch to defense, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
What region is this on there? What region?
It was on NA at Gorseval like 4.5 years ago.
I mean,
Just to be clear,
is it that bad, the text though? I mean, I don't. I'm just playing devil's advocate here, like, but is it? I mean, someone is. I mean, was the whole experience with this person that they were a bit of an ass when you were playing
No.
with them?
They weren't an ass. They were very. I would say that they were very enthusiastic, and we were wiping on the boss, and they were not contributing very much. And we never kicked them. Like we finished the whole raid with them, and no one ever really gave them shit. Like no one like told them that they were stupid because everyone was just so amazed by what was happening. It was it's a once in a lifetime experience to see something like that, and you're just like, what's going on? Like, this is cool. I want to keep watching. Like, I'm not like, I don't hate this person. I'm not mad at them. Like, I don't even care. Like, if they never change their build, like, it doesn't matter to me. And even if they join, like, spoiler alert, hey, here's a little thing about Daddy Brazil now. If they joined a raid group with me now, and they pinged all of that gear and they said the same things in chat, I would not care because I'm confident that whatever role that I'm playing, I can carry hard enough that we could have literally 7 people in the squad or 3 people in the squad doing nothing, and we would be successful. Because like, I want to be good at the game. I want to like help people clear content, and I want to feel good because after it's over, I know that I carried. And I don't give a fuck what other people play. Like, if we spend an hour on Bone Skinner and we don't ever kill it, it's fine because I just enjoy pressing transfusion on Necromancer and I don't really care anymore. Like, I've killed the bosses enough. If I can help one person every like 10 strike missions on their way to becoming a Guild Wars 2 gamer, like, I'm happy with that. I don't fucking care.
Can
the
I ask
only issue I see with that though is that if, let's say hypothetically, that person actually does want to improve at the game and they're just ignorant, they just don't know, right? Is you not telling them actually going to harm them later? Like, I'm brutally honest to people in like a kind way, right? I'll be like, look, you're doing no damage. That means you don't know your rotation. How can we help you get there, right? What do we do to make you better here so that you are contributing more to this team? This is a team game. We need you, right?
Well, see, this was from a time where, like, I'm pretty sure, like, very clearly gear check was like in a very, very gray area. Even like DPS meters were pretty gray at that point. And so saying, hey, your DPS is low and your gear is bad would have been a dead giveaway in chat that something was severely wrong and something was happening that wasn't supposed to. Like, this was from that time of gaming in Guild Wars 2. This was like slightly after I don't know if either of you remember like Jack Snacks and GW2 Specs. It would just read and parse the combat log as best as it could, and they were really, really hacky. And then we actually like moved to memory readers, and then people. Anyways, this was in the time where like memory readers were pretty new and they were pretty hush hush, and so that's why it wasn't ever brought up. Like, the couple of us that had it were just like, what's going on? And we never really addressed it or said anything because hypothetically we never should have had that knowledge to know.
I want to, Jebro, your question and the previous point. Do you want to bring that up now? Because I know he's been bursting. He wants to get in. I want to let him in. Okay, I'm not Look, I want to bring him in. No gatekeeping in this conversation.
Appreciate you, mate. I think the question is, and a lot of what I'm seeing on Twitter and from various people who streamers and new players to the game is the fact that they have cleared raids very quickly. And going on from what Sneb's saying in terms of, I want people to win, I want people to clear content. So I've got a question for Sneb, and then kind of thinking about what Brazil is saying in terms of, I can press that button for transfusion, and I can pull everyone and res everyone to me. I don't care. There's 2 or 3 people who are, we just want to get them done through the content so they can be a Guild Wars 2 gamer. Whatever that means. And like, it's basically so they can clear content. And I think that there is many people that want to do that. And I think, that's fine. They want to complete the things. They want to get the legendary armor, and you have to kind of do that. And I guess my question to Sneb is like, what's the composition? Like when you put 3 people through training raids, is it that you are taking like many scourges to, buffer the team to help, in kind of the teapot, like, the ultimate carry necro scourge, video hype man, yeah, let's do this shit kind of way? Or is it we have a healer, another healer, we might have 1 or 2 scourges maximum? Because in my raids, like when I run these casual raids with people, I need people to know what they're doing. And I say, I don't want that many scourges because I don't want that to be the experience. I want them to learn a role that's brand new to them and learn the mechanic of the fight. Because for me, and this might be me projecting my own enjoyment of the game specifically, is that I want every tiny mechanic to be known to people. I don't want to skip shit. I don't want to skip things. And obviously, that for the more hardcore player, they will skip stuff. And people do that in every single game because they want to clear the content fast. They've done it over and over and over again. They don't need to know that. But in the first instance of this thing, we will play the fight that it's meant to, so we can see each and every single mechanic. We'll hit greens on Veil Guardian. We'll glide on Gorsable. We'll do this stuff so people can learn the fights how they were kind of intended for like beginners to get involved with them. So I guess my question to you, Sneb, in a really long-winded way, is like, when you train people, like, how do you do that? What's the composition? Do you do tactics and mechanics? And is this how everyone kind of learns, like in other ways? Because I feel like when I've seen streamers, and I'm not going to call out people's names, they've just been thrown through this content, and I'm like, with like pretty much a veteran team, and like people say, there's 2 or 3 new players, and I'm like, you can carry probably 5 people, maybe even 6 or 7, if you've got 3 people who know what they're doing and they can heal through that raid. You have an Ellie and maybe 2 scourges. I mean, I might be wrong. But just a question to you, I guess, Sneb, or anyone.
I've done this across the spectrum, right? So I've gone in before where it's me and 9 people that have never raided before, and then I've gone in where it's me, 8 gamers, so to speak, and 1 new person. I've gone in where there's 3 gamers and then 3 like semi-experienced and 3 or 4 new people or whatever. I've done it all, and in my opinion, it kind of just depends. When I go into a raid, I think the ultimate goal of what we're doing here as a team is to try to kill this boss. I want to set us up for success in the best way possible. Is that going to be perfect every time? No. Sometimes we don't have banners because no one has banners, and that's okay. But there are a few things that I try to keep. I always try to have an alacrity. I always try to have 2 quickness sources. And I do this because I'm trying to emulate what it might be like to go into the LFG. Because at some point, I want to get somebody who's raiding with us and set them free so that they can go and actually raid on their own. I feel like if I go and I just say, all right, we're just going to slap together a team, or we're just going to go in, then they don't actually learn what it's really like to go into an LFG. At LFG, they want specific roles. So I try to fill those roles, and then sort of as we're going, I'm saying, hey, like, this is how I'm setting up the composition. This is my logic for why you're in subgroup 1 and 2. Because otherwise, people never learn that. Now, is my way the perfect way of training? Is it for everyone? No. Everyone might learn differently or want a different experience, and that's okay. But for me, when I go in, I say, I want to get this kill, and we're going to do it the best way we can. I also want people to have a sense of success. Because a lot of people, if they go in and they wipe to the raid boss for like 6 hours, they're going to be like, all right, well, I'm never doing this again. That sucked. So I want people to at least taste a little bit of success. Success doesn't have to mean you get the kill, but at least showing the markers. I say this because when I first started raiding, I quit. I went into 1 training raid, and I had done strike missions for like 3 months, and my DPS was really good. I went into Veil Guardian and I was doing like 20k on Hollow, and I was like really proud of that, like in the opener or whatever. I was 3 times the DPS as the next highest DPS. We didn't get past 75%. I was there for 4 hours. After that, I was like, raiding might not be for me. So I quit and didn't try again for 4 months because it was that painful. I was like, I don't have time for this. And that's a big thing, is I want people to get the kill, and I want people to learn it correctly, because frankly, the people that play Guild Wars 2 may not have time to spend 10 hours trying to learn how to do this one boss. I don't even necessarily go over every single mechanic when I do training raids. I try to give them the most important ones. A good example is like on KC, you know, when all the spirits spawn, you have different colors over your head, you got to go kill the spirits, otherwise they explode and wipe the group. I don't even explain that because we skip that with DPS. And if I tell them that, it just adds to the length of time that I have to explain the boss, and it adds to you know, the confusion of so many mechanics. I give people what they need. I tell them why we're doing the composition. I set it up the best for success, and then I go in. Last night, we did Doom. We had 5 gamers, and we had 5 people who were new to Doom. We wiped for 2 hours. And then we finally got the kill. And like, to me, that's what you want. Those people were absolutely jazzed that they got that, because they also earned it, right? They had some help, they had some mentorship, but they were wiping a lot at the beginning to all the different mechanics, and then they got it. Anyway, that's a long-winded way to answer your question.
No, it's not long-winded. That was good, like, information. But like, you know, I guess I think as well, Doom, when Doom first came along, and I guess that's maybe a sign of power creep and everything else. Like 2 hours isn't a long time to wipe on the raid boss. And I just wonder.
I mean, me, I'm probably average, but then I had like 2 or 3 of the best raiders in the game, right? Like I had some really good people helping. So we were handling most of the like really challenging mechanics, and then I gave green 1 to a new player, and they wiped to it constantly, right? Because they had to learn how to do the orbs. But that's just part of it. But you're right. You're absolutely right.
That's my question there as well, you see, because effectively, if you are taking care of and again, this is your way of doing things, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. If you are taking care of some of those main mechanics, and you are getting one person to do that green, and hopefully, you know, that person is, to be fair, like, you know, they can be whoever, and as long as they're trying hard, like, I wouldn't give a fuck, like myself. Sorry to use the F-bomb. But like, I guess that's my question again as well. Like, they're essentially doing damage, and they do have to pay attention to some of the mechanics, and obviously moving and making sure the positioning is correct. But you're essentially taking care of a lot of work for them, but at least they know kind of how the mechanics go, so they can go into a raid and know how the fight works, but they can't necessarily pick up those roles that you're kind of taking.
Yeah, I can't possibly train everybody in every role all at the same time, or it would take months to get through Doom. The reason that I do it that way is, frankly, we have a problem on NA. People don't do raids. You have to inspire people to want to do them, and in my opinion, the way to do that is to give it to them in little bits. When I learned how to do raids, I only knew how to play DPS. Is that a good thing? No. I now try to force at least 1 or 2 new people to take on a few of the things without getting all the new people to do all the mechanics. Because otherwise, one of them might get Hardstuck at green 1, and the others will never get to like experience their mechanics. So imagine green 1 finally figures it out. Now it's green 2, they wipe immediately. Well, now we got to go through, like, we're never going to get where we need to be. So I like to just give it in little chunks so that people can actually
see the rest of the fight.
See the rest of the fight, because that's how they're going to learn. They're going to see the rest of the fight. They see what the other mechanics are happening. And while we're doing this, I'm explaining. I'm like, okay, G2 is going to star. G3 is prepping in 30 seconds, right? Like, I'm explaining what's going on without them having to do all of it. Because if they do all of it, it's just too much for them to
so
bite.
You're explaining all of those individual roles anyway as you're going, so they're getting that information. So that's good.
Most of it. Like, there are times when, again, I omit information on purpose so that I don't overwhelm them. I want them to focus on what they're supposed to do and where they're supposed to go. But I used to explain everything, and it would take me half an hour before every boss. And I started to realize people would dip, right? They'd be like, I gotta go, I can't. So then I'd have to re-explain things. So now I just go like TLDR, 5 minutes. These are the important points. As we're going through these polls, I'm gonna shout out everything that's going on, or do my best to do that. I'll try to give you prompts. Let's try to get this kill, go.
That's how a lot of people prefer to learn, in all honesty, including me. Like otherwise, it's
Because
just
then they actually get to fight the boss.
Yeah,
They
you get to
swing
play
their
the game.
sword.
Right, you get
Yeah,
to you get to play the game.
Play.
Yeah, you know, if you spend half an hour explaining it, dude, people switched off immediately. They want to play their video game, you know. So I think it's way better
you
to do
don't
that.
need a PhD in raiding to raid. That's my point, right? You just need to be able to go in there, get the basics, fight the boss.
The way that. Oh, go ahead, Jebro.
No, I was just joking. Like, there probably is a PhD in raiding for World of Warcraft somewhere. I wonder whether probably
Somebody get on that. Put a master class up on Coursera or something, right?
Let's do it. Who would do that in the Guild Wars 2 community, though? I don't know.
Like, my approach to raid training is similar, but it's a lot more focused on the gaming and doing things the hard way. So I'll say, if I start a raid training squad, I'll say, okay, boys and girls, we are gonna do this boss. I'm gonna give you a quick explanation, and then I'll just pull the boss. And everybody's like, wait. And Veil Guardian runs over, and then there's a green circle, and everyone dies. And I'll say, okay, cool. So that's the green circle. This is how we handle that. And so people are like, okay, cool. We've got the green circle. We figured it out. And we'll go in and like maybe we wipe on the second pull to the green circle. Maybe we don't. But then the blues come up and the blues teleport people across the map and 3 people will die and the rest of us keep going and we survive the green circle. And we just progress further and further into the fight. And I'll explain mechanics as they kill us. So as we're on farm, I'll explain another mechanic. I don't explain anything at the start. I just say, fuck it, we're going to go gaming, and then we just game. And when we hit the barrier, we all get hammers, and we just smash it down. And so it's kind of the, like, we're going to learn this the hard way, because that's how I do it, and we're never going to forget it. But I'm kind to people. I don't say, like, hey, look, you fucked up every green circle, I'm going to replace you, because you suck. Because I've been in groups like that. I've been in raid groups where people take it incredibly seriously, and they're just like, look, if you fuck up, we're going to bench you, and then you can just watch. And, like, I've also heard well, I guess I can't even say the phrase ironically on Twitch, but, like, I've heard some, you know, pretty offensive phrases used unironically towards me and other people in raid groups. And, like, I don't, like, at the time, I thought it was cool when I was, like, a 21-year-old gamer to just be, like, blazingly rude. But now it's just like, fuck it, like, let's just play, let's just enjoy it. If you're not enjoying it, you can leave and we can find someone else. If you don't like it, that's no problem. And then if one person leaves and then 3 other people are like, actually, I'm kind of done for the day, that's fine. That's okay. It's just fine.
Brazil isn't that hardcore, Teapot.
Sorry, what's up?
Brazil isn't that hardcore.
No, Brazil's a casual.
No.
He's joined the casuals. He's joined the casuals now. It's it.
This is actually completely untrue. I just understand how to compartmentalize it, because I would love for other people to be super hardcore, because, like, if I want to play the game hardcore, like, I'm gonna do it. Like, I will fucking I will min-max, I will go at it. And, like, I solo dungeons, and I will throw, like, if I was playing Super Smash Bros. Melee, I would go through 300 controllers, because that's how mad I get when I wipe on a dungeon solo. I've broken I have 9 keyboards under my bed, and 5 of them don't work because they've gone into the wall because of wiping on dungeon solos.
Just keep like a memory or something.
I'm a fucking yes, like, I'm a gamer. I don't play PvP anymore, because PvP, I just want to 1v1 people on Thief and shit on them. And unfortunately, that's not what PvP is about. And I get mad. I was playing PvP with Sarah the other day, and I just, like, exploded into the microphone, and it wasn't even directed with her. But she's like, you shouldn't play this anymore. This is bad for you. And I was like, it's bad for me. I shouldn't do it. So I can't
do this.
No, I can't.
Hey, there was a really good question in the chat. I just want to bring it up.
Let's do it.
Somebody was asking me specifically, but I'm curious what everyone else thinks about this. What do you do if somebody is just if they hopelessly can't play how I want them to play, right? So they join and their DPS is just really bad, or they're just not producing the boons. I go through like a little system. I watch them and I watch them fail a whole bunch of times to see if they'll learn from it, right? I watch them fail to see if they'll like figure it out, right? Then if I'm on stream, I'll just say, hey, we got to help you, right? Sometimes I'll privately message them and I'll just say, hey, like we got an issue here. You're not doing any damage and you're supposed to have this build. Let's check your gear, first of all. Do you have the right gear? Yes. Okay, are we crit capped? Do we have you in the right subgroup? And I explain crit cap to them. All right, if that's not the case, do you have the right build? Do you have something wrong with that? If that's all good, then I go, all right, tell me what you do when we start fighting the boss. Do you just mash buttons or what? Like, do you have a rotation? And a lot of the times that's where you hit, right? They have all the gear, they looked up on Snow Crows, but did they read the guide? No, right? They put all the skills on, but they don't really know how they work, right? So I go, okay, if we're gonna have you be successful, we need to have you understand what your skills do. And so I would set aside a time and we can like walk through. I stayed up till 4 a.m. one time and helped somebody learn how to play Hollow. I'll just take them and I'll say, okay, let's learn your rotation. I've even gone into the aerodrome before and be like, this is how you learn a rotation. You read your skills. What do your skills do? Think about which do the most damage. How should you prioritize this? And by going through these steps, eventually somebody will improve. I'm not asking anyone to be like Snow Crow's level raider when they first go in. What I am asking for people to do is to want to improve. If the person really doesn't care to try, my groups are not for them. And that's okay, right? My expectation is that people will want to improve so that we can kill the boss. If they have no desire to improve, then my trainings are not for them. That's it.
Yeah, and ultimately, I don't know. I guess I have an even more pragmatic way of looking at it. If I know someone that's just they're a bit hopeless, they probably aren't going to be able to measurably improve within the course of the training. Just put them on a role that doesn't matter, and just let them watch the fight, right?
Yeah, I mean, usually those people are on DPS anyway, right?
Yeah, just put them on DPS, and then it doesn't matter anymore. Like the way I see it, and this is definitely the way I come at this. If you can't carry 2 to 3 people in your raid group, you aren't good, right? You're bad. And that's just the way it is, right? Like, you know, I don't think there's any raid in the entire game that's hard enough that you can't pretty much get some people who are having a bit of trouble through it, like if you play sufficiently well, particularly with the rest of the group. So yeah, that's my take on that. But yeah, this is all pre-recorded, guys. This is all pre-recorded. I actually say that it's pre-recorded every single stream to make sure that I trick all of you guys into thinking that it's pre-recorded.
And he has a chat bot that comes in at exactly the same time in the recording and asks if it's pre-recorded.
Yep. Exactly right.
Yeah, and you can just filter that in. The chat is the only thing that's like actually live. We're all just like we're just talking.
Yep. And I see a lot of discussion about this, about the meta stuff, right? I've seen this in the chat that's being discussed, and I do definitely want to touch on this as well. So this is another really difficult topic, and to me it seems to be very obvious, but I am super curious if anyone can give me if we can get a discussion going about this there as well. I think a lot of players don't like the fact that there are good builds and bad builds, and that the difference between these things is absolutely vast.
And then there's boots bad builds.
Yeah, well,
I was going to say the same thing.
Hey, those are actually pretty good a lot of the time, right? But I think this is actually like a mega pain point in the Guild Wars 2 community. And also personal skill being relevant as well. Like, here's a really good example, actually. Gorseval, you can do no updraft Gorseval, so you can do it without going in any of the updrafts and, you know, jumping off the edge, right, to flow back onto the platform. You can do that with 4 people playing a good build. Now, a lot of groups will actually struggle with the DPS check, even if they do updrafts, even with 10 people. That means that 4 good players running good builds is probably 3 times or even 4 times better than 10 players who aren't very good and aren't running good builds, right? This is the level of disparity between what it means to have a good strategy and a good build and a bad build or a bad strategy. And the example that was used in the chat was Druid, of course. And this is actually an excellent example, by the way, guys, because Druid at the start of Heart of Thorns was actually pretty much the only like really, really solid healer. You could play Heal Tempest, actually, and it was a very, very strong build. But Druid was so overpowered at the start of Heart of Thorns, because this is when, of course, ArenaNet kind of added the concept of healers, right? Back in the day, you wouldn't really have this healer role. It was that you would just one-shot the boss, go invulnerable. Even in PvP, right, you would have maybe a bunker guard, right? But it wasn't like... it wasn't like Core Guard is now, right? Core Guard's like a healer, right, in PvP. But even back in the day in core PvP, like Bunker Guard, yeah, it had some healing on it, right? But it wasn't to the extent that you have now in any area of the game. And I think a lot of players don't like the idea that the way they want to play the game is actually wrong. And I'm actually a really big play how you want guy, right? I love this. I love seeing all the different crazy builds. Like, you know, I'm a heal scrapper enjoyer. Fuck it. You can even play heal warrior. I'll enjoy that too, you know, heal Ellie, boon chrono, right? Whatever you want to play. I like it. I like all these different builds. But the thing is that what I don't like is when people play bad builds that are basically not doing anything whatsoever and don't contribute to the success of the group, right? There's a big difference between a build that, you know, it's not a meta build, right? But that's cool, right? Nothing wrong with that. You can play that. It's no big deal. And then a build that just doesn't do anything, right? And is basically just an anchor on the group, dragging everyone down. And I think this is where people tend to get a little bit lost, because they don't like the fact that their chosen playstyle is one of those builds that doesn't do anything. And it's just totally useless, right? And
that's a big problem in training.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, that's basically, that's what I say there. I think that's kind of a big problem. What do you guys make of that?
Isn't that
I encounter that constantly. Like people will come in and they'll be like, but I made this build. It's so special to me.
Yeah.
And I go, well, I actually had somebody come in. I was doing training one time at Mersad Overseer, and we were wiping to normal Mersad Overseer constantly, right? I was taking 9 people who'd like never done it. And there was a chrono there, and they were just doing like nothing, right? Like they were having so little impact, right? I thought they might be playing boon chrono, but our boon uptime was horrendous, right? So I said, what build are you playing? And they said, oh, it's a DPS build that I made. I'm like, well, what is it? Because your DPS is really low. And they were running like some rune that was like power plus condition damage. So they had no expertise, no ferocity, no precision. It was weird, right? And I just said, look, if you change your runes, you will do double the damage you're doing now. Like if you just change like a few things. But people get really defensive about that. Yep. In my trainings, I have to say, hey, you don't have to play the meta, but you have to play a build that actually is going to do something, right? Like, I don't even require druids or anything in my squads. I just we have to be able to do the mechanics.
It's a lot less extreme than it used to be. Like the meta used to be a lot more rigid because the game was way less balanced than it is now. Like in general, the game is pretty good actually. Like you know, everything kind of works these days, with a few exceptions, particularly around core specs. But even saying that is not actually that true, right? Like if you're a necromancer and you play like death magic and blood magic in raids, you're probably not really doing anything, you know? Like if you're a chronomancer and you're playing scepter and you're playing power with scepter mode, yeah, you're probably pretty useless. You aren't really doing much. There's a lot that I think a lot of players in Guild Wars 2 don't realize just how wrong you can be when you make a decision, right? Like the game, it's not like World of Warcraft, right? Like this is my favorite example. If you log into the video game World of Warcraft and you pick a shaman and you pick restoration shaman, no matter how bad your build is, like you could pick the exact worst talent out of every talent you could possibly pick, you will still be a healer, right? There is no way out of that, right? You are going to be a healer on a restoration shaman. There's no way to escape. Okay. But if you play, say, heal firebrand traits, okay, but you take berserker gear, you are totally useless, right? As in, like, yeah, you are a zero person, right? You are not even a player, right? You are worse than nothing, pretty much, like, at that point, because now your group isn't aware that, you know, like, oh, you're playing heal firebrand, right? And you say, yeah, I'm playing heal firebrand. I've got my staff, I've got my mace shield, right? Oh yeah, hooray, heal firebrand. But then you have completely the wrong gear. Maybe you have the wrong utility skills there as well, and you just don't do anything, right? In the entire time, and the game allows you to do this, right? And then if you say, listen, buddy, okay, this gear, it's not good, right? You know, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, right? That's when you have a lot of problems, like, and. Yeah, I mean, and that can come across as toxic, because I'm saying that, yeah, your build, it doesn't do anything, right? This is clearly a non-functional build. And yeah, you can make your own build, and it can be satisfying to do this. And you can do this as long as you actually think about it. Like, you know, if we're saying we're going to play Conditioned Necromancer, for example, like, oh, okay, Scepter, that's got a lot of condies on it, right? That seems like a pretty good choice. You know, let's go ahead and look at our trait lines. Oh yeah, Curses, that's got loads of condition damage in it. Sounds good to me, right? Then you might look at the other trait lines and go, let's see. How about Scourge? Oh yeah, Scourge has got loads of extra condition damage. That sounds pretty sensible. And the third trait line actually might be a little bit difficult, because Soul Reaping is the correct choice, but that might not immediately be apparent. Like the traits are, you know, you could look at it in more than one way, I guess, right, with the way they work. But, you know, you could kind of get there, right? And if you got those two, if you just figured out Scourge and Curses, that's good enough, right? Like, you can play Blood Magic. Hell, you could even play Spite or whatever. It probably doesn't make a big difference at that point. But the trouble is that I think a lot of players go like, dude, I'm playing this. I like these weapons. I like this gear stat. And you know what? I'm not changing it. And that's where you have a problem, because now you have a lot of players who kind of come into this, have never had any problems in open world or the story clearing content with the build they've been running the entire time. And all of a sudden, their build doesn't work anymore, right? And there's no way to necessarily say that's wrong. Or you're attacking my Hammer Guardian. Fun fact, actually, Croce, that is actually an example of a build that isn't bad enough with what I'm talking about here. Hammer Guardian, I believe auto attacking on Hammer Guard will probably get you around 25k DPS, I think, just because of how good the auto attack is and how good Dragon Hunter utilities are, particularly the spinny trap, right, is really good.
Yeah.
You will probably get 25k. That is actually not bad enough. Like, what we're talking about here is Carrion Longbow Ranger, right, or Power Shortbow Ranger, or like Power Rev that's using staff only because they like the spinny spin animation. Honestly, no, that isn't bad enough. Like, Power Rev with just staff auto attack is not actually even bad enough, right? That's it's bad, but it's not horrible. But there are a lot of very bad choices that you could make, and it's only apparent once you start playing this content. And the same is true in PvP, right? I'm sure you've seen this, Jebro, right? You've seen full Signet Ellie. I mean, I've seen this. I've seen full Signet Elementalist. And fun fact, actually, there's actually a core Ellie build that uses 4 Signets. It's actually not that bad, but this is not that kind. I'm talking Staff Ellie with all the Signets, right? Not good, right? Or you're running a support build, but you have a bad amulet, right? Or you have a duelist build, but you're playing a completely like glass cannon setup, right? It's just, but yeah. I don't know. I think this is like a really big problem in the game, is that players don't really like the idea that they can make really bad choices, and they aren't even aware that they can make really bad choices that significantly affect the group in a very negative way.
I mean, I think they just don't know, right? I mean, I had somebody yesterday, it's in my guild, they're kind of a new player, they're really excited about Reaper, right? And I was talking about why Reaper is good in some ways and bad in other ways. I was explaining basically that, you know, a lot of your DPS comes from you going into Shroud, and if you're getting hit by mechanics, you lose DPS because you lose Shroud, right? So they were like, oh, I love playing Reaper because it's a bit of a brawler. And I was like, well, but not really. Like, it's not quite like Scrapper. Sure, you can take a bunch of damage, but then you're going to be really ineffective. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm using soldier's gear. Everything's fine. And I was like, but no, right? Like, you're not doing any damage. You're not the brawler. When you're in soldiers, you're just sitting there eating a bunch of damage and not really dealing any. Like if you want to be an effective Reaper in endgame, then this is what you need to do. If you want to just go around an open world and do some meta events and stuff, then sure, your build is fine, whatever. But people don't understand what the attributes do. They don't understand what their skills do. They don't understand what their traits do. And I kind of push a lot of the blame onto the game because there isn't, and Brazil, aka Preston, talked about this earlier, right? Where there's nothing that sort of is an incline into raids. And so there's nothing that will prompt you to say, hey, I wonder what power does, right? Oh, I wonder what concentration does. Oh, these boons, what do they actually do, right? People don't do that because they're like, start game, boost 80, dry top. Oh man, or silver waste, everything's just getting annihilated by me. Like I am the god of Guild Wars 2 because I'm spinning to win on my Reaper or whatever, and things are good.
Well, I just had an idea now that you mentioned that. So when you unlock one of the elite specializations, don't you get like a piece of armor, like the shoulders or the helmet or whatever?
Yeah,
you do, don't you?
Yeah, like they should just really, instead of soldier's gear, they should just make it stat selectable. Force people to read.
I wasn't even going to say that. Like if you unlock strength on warrior, they should give you a berserker's chest piece. Or if you unlock curses on necromancer, they should give you a rampager's scepter. They should give you something that has stats, and they should highlight traits that go well with those stats or something. They could easily do something like that. They could implement some kind of reward or some kind of UI, and they could just make it account bound like the rest of the gear is from leveling up, because they just give you like random gear for leveling up, but there's no direction on if it's good or not. It doesn't. It's just,
there kind of is direction, but it's not very good, right? The direction is if you clear the content, then it must be good, right? So people clear content, they think, oh, like I got through the story with all this, like everything's good, right? And so everyone's under this illusion that everything they do is actually really strong, but there's nothing that shows them that. There's no metric by which they can measure their improved performance or how they actually, like what their gear is actually doing to improve them. There's nothing there. So it's not the player's fault at all. They just don't know.
The problem too is that part of the game, like half of the, probably 80% of the game, maybe more, is completely story driven, and gear has no impact. And there are people that just want a story and they just want to like learn the lore about the game and shit. But then some of the best story is in the raids, and it's locked in the raids, and there are lore achievements where you can go around and find journal pieces, and you're running to Matthias and there's one on the ground, and it says, you click on it, it says, I don't have enough time to read this right now. Maybe I come back after we've finished the thread off. And you have stuff like that, and people want to experience it, but you go into a raid, and if you don't have the gear, maybe you can't do it. And maybe someone's not going to want to be tolerant or not going to want to try and put in the extra effort to carry or whatever. But there's this, now that I just think about it, my head hurts so much because, like you said, there's just not, they could implement something to tell people how synergies work between stat sets. They could do that. And they could also, like, that would just help people experience the story that the raids have to offer, because the rest of the game is totally about story and making decisions and learning about and being the commander and all this shit. But and even in Fractals, like in Fractal CMs and stuff, the story's
big.
It's big. It's big, and it changes too.
On CM as well.
You have this whole like arc. You have this whole arc with arc. Yeah, you have an arc, and it's really cool. And you learn a lot of stuff, and I don't want to spoil any of it because I'm sure there are people that have never experienced it at all. But it's cool. It's really nice. And believe me, I'm not the biggest fan of Guild Wars 2's story. And if you've ever heard me talk about it before, you'll probably know that. Because if I'm completely honest, a lot of the story feels like it was written on a napkin and crayons at the kitchen table. But the raid story, especially like Wings 1, 2, and 3, it feels like they had Hollywood directors come in and write that. It's unbelievable how vast and quality the difference is, and the highest quality story is gated behind some of the hardest content, and people want to experience it and they can't. So I don't know. Like,
Do you think that's a big reason why? I mean, this is. I remember. I think I talked about this maybe the last time I was on TeaTime, which was maybe like 4 years ago or something. But like how there are ways to engage players in that content. Like if that's the thing they really want to engage in, there's ways that the ArenaNet can do that. Rift did this back in the day. I don't know if people played Rift, but like they had story raid instances. You could literally go and defeat the boss with 2 friends, and it would literally have mini mechanics in the encounter, and it would give you what you went there to get, the story, right?
Make easy modes. Do it.
Yeah.
Make easy.
Yeah, it's got to happen. And it's what they're doing. It's funny. Like we're kind of talking about this as if that they should do this. They actually are doing this. The hard content in the expansion is going to be primarily, or at least some of it, is going to be strike missions, and strike missions are going to be directly from the story. They'll have so you'll have the story mode, which will be in fact, we essentially have 3 tiers of difficulty that have now been confirmed by End of Dragons. The story, right, which will be soloable, right? Very, very easy. Then you'll have the strike mission, the normal mode, which will be done by 10 players, right? And will be, akin to what a strike mission might be now. And then it's already confirmed that there will be challenge mode for all of these strike missions. This, to me, is the sane approach to doing it, right? It is perfect, right? Because you have, again, you can experience the story. You can get through it. Then you have the normal mode, which is kind of like, you want to have a bit of group repeatable content, if you fancy trying that. And then you have the challenging content that's actually difficult for the player base, which is going to be the challenge mode there as well. And then you have fishing too. Nice.
I'm
Preston,
my friend.
What's up?
Sorry, let Jebro speak first, and I just have a question for you.
Oh no.
I was just saying I'm living for fishing. Like skiffs and fishing, I'm there for it. That's my hardcore content. I'm going for it. PvP and fishing. Brazil loves it. I'm gonna get you. We're gonna go on a deep sea mission to fish. We're gonna be the first hardcore fishers in the game. You
I
gonna
hate to tell you this, but that's not gonna happen.
Why? You don't like fishing in games?
Actually, never mind. I'll refrain from the joke I was gonna make.
All right. Okay. It will be a Sneb go.
I've got a good. Okay, so this, I often get a lot of flack for this opinion, but I do not like the story in Guild Wars 2 either.
That's the correct opinion to have.
But it's not because of the story. It's because of the gameplay, if that makes sense. So so listen to this. Imagine you're the commander. Everyone's like, you are the guy, right? Like you're the guy. You kill the dragons, right? You're the guy. Like these dragons, they are the strongest dragons you've ever seen. They absolutely annihilate everything, but you're the guy, right? Like you're the guy. You're gonna go kill the dragon. You're the guy. And so you're like, okay, I'm the guy. And you go in and you're like, swing sword, it instantly dies, right? Like there's no fail state, right? So you're hyped up in this story that like, you gotta save the world. You gotta save the world. You're the guy. Then you go in and you do it in one shot. Everything's easy. It's over. I hate it. Like
you're wrong.
To me, it's like AFK content.
You're actually wrong. Like, have you even done the story?
What? Like the story?
Palawa Joko kills you, and you have to go fight the Eater of Souls that everyone raged about on Reddit. You go into the afterlife and you fight that, and that damn thing was so hard they had to nerf it like 3 times.
But there's no fail state. Like
There's no fail
You
state.
never have to restart the story.
People actually got stuck. Dude, no joke. On Eater of Souls or whatever it was called.
You think you should have to restart the whole story if you fail it at some point? Because here's the other thing. Here's the other thing.
I do.
Wait, what?
No. Okay.
Dude, Sneb is hardcore as fuck, dude. What the fuck?
No. Listen to me. Listen. I think there needs to be a fail state at times. Like you can't. Look, there's a reason for this, because people, if they're trying to go do content later, they get absolutely eviscerated when they walk into hardcore fractals and raids because there's nothing that's ever challenged them before. If you're going to have a story that actually means something, then it needs to kind of align in difficulty. I'm not saying to go make these like raid level or anything like that. I'm saying put some kind of progression in the story to where they ramp up in difficulty. Or maybe I think what they're doing now is they're going to put like kind of difficulties like they did with DRMs, but have something that makes it more meaningful, right? Because when I kill the bosses, like, look, everybody, spoiler alert, you have 5 seconds to pause if you're in the story. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When I fought Balthazar, I literally went to the bathroom and came back. I thought it was the most ridiculous thing ever.
Mate. You gotta stop playing RNG. That's all it is. But like the thing is, aren't achievements those kind of more like intricate things for? But MMORPG story in games is not supposed to be difficult, really. I mean, if you played Elder Scrolls Online story, that the storytelling is amazing, but the gameplay is piss easy. In World of Warcraft, it's the same in any MMORPG. The gameplay is really it's additional. It's just like I think Guild Wars 2 does a good job of actually having better mechanics for fights now. I think now more so than in the past.
Yeah.
Specifically.
I think
Put any fail
Jebro-
state. That's all I'm saying. Like, if
Jebro-
this is supposed to be the best dragon in the world, then make it kill me once, and I'm forced to restart the fight.
here's the thing, though.
That's it.
Well,
Jebro is super right here. Like
You're
Guild
all
Wars
wrong.
2.
You're all wrong
No,
about this.
you're even more wrong. Guild Wars
I'm
2
not,
is
because-
harder than these other games. Like it's legit harder than like stuff like WoW. WoW is like really easy. If you do like the open world stuff, it's like super easy in that game.
Okay,
I think.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh, go ahead, Brazil. I was gonna destroy Sneb. I'm gonna annihilate him. I'm gonna crush him.
No, I'm gonna
right?
actually do that
Yep.
because the actual canon in Guild Wars 2 is that you never die and you just waypoint or you get back up. You don't actually ever die in the canon of Guild Wars 2. So having a failsafe where you full reset the story upon dying doesn't even it's not congruent. It doesn't make sense.
Don't die in Guild Wars 2.
But yeah, but you fail. Okay, so I'm a Guild Wars 1 stan. We all know this. So like in Guild Wars 1, you went to do a mission, which is a big fundamental part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
You could fail, right?
Right.
Like that. Like you actually could fail, right? There were mechanics and things that would make you fail, and you'd have to restart. And some missions were super easy, and then some were pretty hard. All I'm saying is that the story, to me, when it hypes up this end boss and stuff, and you can literally go in and you can die 100 times and just keep pressing 1 and eventually it dies. That doesn't help the player learn anything. This is supposed to be the strongest boss, right? You've been hyped up for the last 6 hours of gameplay and story or whatever, and now it doesn't mean anything, right?
Right, because now people are used to playing Pokemon games where you don't have to train individual Pokemon anymore. You have an EXP share that levels them all up at the same time. People are used to
Pokemon's
playing...
a great example of like actual
I know.
difficulty because you get to a gym and there's a chance that you
wrong.
actually can fail if your Pokemon aren't the high enough level.
Wrong.
No, you can't do that anymore. That doesn't... Anyways.
Well,
but,
I'm
like,
talking old Pokemon games, and I haven't
correct,
played like the
correct.
newest
The
one.
old ones, that is in fact the case. And the old ones have... Well, the old ones have hidden mechanics like EVs and IVs and natures, just like Guild Wars 2 does in the end game, and they're completely hidden. You would never know. You would never find them on purpose. It would have to be like some kind of an accident. But it's just like we don't have 40-man raids anymore. We have 10-man raids, and you can barely fill them. Like gaming has changed. Guild Wars 2 comes after Guild Wars 1 because 1 is before 2 in the alphabet. Alphabet number line. Sorry, I went to an American school.
The number bet. I don't know.
But
in numbers. Like,
yeah, gaming is just, it's a different thing. Like you can't have hardcore story because here's the thing. People can't beat Big Nose Ted. People can't beat Big Nose Ted in the personal story, which is like the level 2 boss.
Later, mate. I can't do it.
But they can. But nothing stops them from beating
But
it.
there are
'Cause
Reddit threads about how they
walk in.
can't.
Okay, right. Let me step in here, boys. So what you're observing here and what you're correctly pointing out. Okay, right. I am going to be the ultimate radical center here. Both of you guys are right. Okay, so let me explain. Let me give you an explanation that essentially incorporates both of the statements that you guys made. what we're observing here is that the way people engage with video games is very different now than it was, say, 10 to 15 years ago. Right now, the average player who's playing an MMORPG is not looking for a challenge. If you go back to, say, vanilla World of War, it's funny actually, saying this about vanilla WoW, right? Vanilla WoW was actually a response to the community getting more casual. EverQuest was significantly more hardcore than World of Warcraft. But World of Warcraft was considered to be an incredibly casual game. It's not like EverQuest, right? If you died, you lost XP. Mobs would chase you literally to the boundary of a zone, right? Like all this just horrible shit in the game that would ruin you. Yeah, Tibia is like this. You lose XP. You can lose like so much progress if you die in that game, right? Like you can lose so much time. Hours and hours and hours of progress is gone, right? These games over time, as the gaming community has grown, it's removed a lot of these really inherently hardcore mechanics, because the way that the player base engaged with it is very, very different. Video games these days are more like interactive movies. And look, I'm not saying that as a pejorative, by the way. Some of the most critically acclaimed and well-executed games are in this category. A really good example of this would be something like Uncharted, something like The Last of Us, right? Assassin's Creed a little bit there as well, right? Like these video games are very, very well received, incredibly popular, right? And are essentially this interactive movie, right? Is what they are, right? That is what these games are. Like, yeah, there are exceptions to this. For example, Dark Souls is a great example of this, is something that does kind of retain more punishing, more hardcore gameplay. But you're talking about one game out of thousands and thousands and thousands of games, right? Like, this is the way most people engage with the media. And ultimately, this is where I would slam this entire thing. I slam this stuff down big time. I think the entire idea of ramping difficulty is obsolete, right? If anyone says ramping difficulty is like really, really big, I think this kind of says you're a boomer, right? This dates a person, because I agree with it conceptually, but players simply aren't interested in this. Players simply are not interested in difficulty in any way. People are not looking for that in their video game. They're looking for a cinematic, interactive story experience they can play with their friends and interact with this large, huge, and potentially persistent world, right? I think the persistence is a really big part of MMOs. The idea that you do something and it's there forever, right? You do this and then it doesn't reset, right? If you're playing, say, League of Legends, right? It doesn't matter how many games you play, you're going to be back on Summoner's Rift, screaming at the same guy who's like inting on the top lane or whatever, right? The entire time, and complaining that no one ever ganks your lane, right? It's going to be the same thing over and over again. Whereas an MMO is persistent. But the thing is that I do not think ramping difficulty is good. And the example of this is World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy does this a little bit more, actually. You do have a bit of a ramp there, but I actually don't think that's really anything to do with the reason it has success. Same thing with World of Warcraft. I actually played World of Warcraft Legion and a bit of Battle for Azeroth. The open world content in that game is straight up easier than Guild Wars 2. There is actually no way around that. Like, very much so Heart of Thorns and even Path of Fire as well. It's just straight up easier. And I would even go as far to say that the story content in those games is significantly easier than the Guild Wars 2 story content. The difference is that they have all the content is accessible in both of these games. If you want to go through the story in World of Warcraft, you can play LFR difficulty. You can play normal mode dungeons. And these things are absolutely trivial, right? But, oh wait, they also have mythic difficulty, which is excruciating. It's if you like cock and bull torture, right, is basically why you would play this. They also have that. And the same thing with Final Fantasy with Ultimates. I know, and people are going to flame me for the comments, so I'm sorry, guys. I want to hand this off to you guys, but I have to say something about Final Fantasy, because otherwise the nerds are going to get me. Yes, guys, I am aware that I believe in certain more difficult encounters in Final Fantasy, there's kind of off-canon lore or additional lore in some of the harder fights. So yes, I know it's not exactly like that. So yes, haha, I know, don't write a comment. Right, okay, there you go, I'm done.
You get that a lot. I mean, you got to speak about. I mean, I played Elder Scrolls Online for a long time, as you know as well, and it's the same. The overland content is easy. The actual storyline, when you get into the single content, like the the player content storylines, it's easy. There's no challenge. There's not supposed to be. That's not what MMORPGs jobs are. Like Guild Wars original content, the difficulty was in your own gameplay with your friends, right? Because that was the core gameplay, other than like guild versus guild stuff. Like that was what you did, right? And it added that difficulty in a time where games were more difficult. And Matt's talking about like World of Warcraft, and it's completely dead on right about World of Warcraft really making the whole genre more accessible, because that's what they've tried to do over the years. It's like mobile gaming. Mobile gaming is more accessible to everyone because of many reasons. Literal mobile cell phone in your hand and minimal buttons to play games. More people play games because it's easier to understand and connect to it. It's like Guild Wars 2, like all of these MMORPGs. And I've been, over the last year, I have gone through, I think, nearly most modern MMORPGs that you can play right now. If you name it, like on the stream, like you're probably here now, I've probably played it. And Guild Wars 2 genuinely like story and actual overland content, especially in Heart of Thorns. Like Heart of Thorns, like everyone, you talk about the Raptors, you talk about, mobs, everyone connects to that mob and they're like, please no. Like, even now, joke about it, you meme about it, like there's videos, there's like there's gifs, there's loads of stuff out there about like specific mobs. So in Guild Wars 2, like I think when I was playing it for so long and didn't play other games like other MMORPGs and stuff, you really forget actually, if you're playing Guild Wars 2, you're probably pretty good. And one of the main reasons is because of the dodge mechanic in the game. Dodge mechanic adds so much to like Guild Wars 2 in terms of difficulty and overland like content and stuff. It's like another thing where people are like, dodge is a stat in WoW, like in other games. It's a stat. It's not a thing you actually physically do. And other games are starting to, adapt that stuff. Anyway, that's other MMORPG talk. But like, it's important that story is easy, accessible, and you're able to move through it. And I think with strikes, like Matt was saying before as well, that is such a good way of pushing people through very, very gradually, because you have to. And raids, I feel like raids in Guild Wars 2, and this is why I don't think they're going to make any more, and people are going to hate me for saying that, because I just don't think it's something that they can maybe want to push onto people anymore. But like, this is just my opinion. I hope I'm wrong. I do hope I'm wrong, because I know that people are going to get sad about that, because raids are awesome and I enjoy raids. But like strikes, I think like Matt, you said, when you said it before, it's got that gradual increase of difficulty they can manage with one boss in an arena, and that's the encounter. You can leave that room, like in Final Fantasy 14 as well, and you can go and do a different one. If you're struggling, you don't have to leave the entire raid. There's not multiple different fights. I'm not even looking at chat right now because I know I was going to say. But like, I don't know, man. It's like, I don't know. I know you're going to say something about that. So I keep calling.
Yeah, give me a chance later to address the story thing again.
I'll just say one thing super quick, and then I'll hand it right off to you, Sneb. Okay, so Sneb is next. Everyone else, okay. So here's the thing. Here's the thing about that. I mean, the core issue that we're talking about here is the fact that a lot of players who play the game for the story feel gated and locked out because the story is only found in harder content. This is a criticism that I can completely agree with, actually. I think this is a very fair criticism of the game and of raids in general. Why do raiders like raids? Is it because of the story or is it because of the gameplay? Well, it's because of the gameplay, right? And why do players want to get into raids? Is it because they want the game to be really, really easy and they just, they hate the idea of being good at the game? No, of course not. They want to access the story. It's funny how it kind of comes full circle, right? Like a lot of this is a complete misunderstanding of the other party's intentions and desires, right? So the hardcore players, you see this a lot, right? You see the hardcore scene or more hardcore players saying, "Oh, you guys just want everything to be super easy, right? Oh, haha, you're so bad at the game, get good, right?" But that's not actually what the more casual player wants. The more casual player wants access to the story without having to actually put a lot of effort in, or without having to actively try and put some hours into the game to really put some work in to get there. That's not the same thing as saying that they want the game to be easy. They just want to access this part of the content that you don't even care about as a more hardcore player, not care about that much anyway. Without having to put loads of hours in. It's just a really big kind of miscommunication. And the reason why I hate this a lot is because you can literally have the best of both worlds. Like, and now ArenaNet confirms that with the way strike missions are being developed in End of Dragons, right? Like, this entire argument is stupid, right? Because you can literally do both of these. And in fact, you know what? You don't even have to look at Guild Wars 2. It turns out that these other games, these very small indie games I'm sure you guys have never heard of, called World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy, they actually do this very effectively. And everyone can access the story, and you still have hardcore content at the same time. So it is very much a bit of a weird argument, I think, in this regard, because the solution already exists. We just need to actually agree on it and not push back against it too much. Because I think a lot of the kind of friction and tension between players, certainly with regards to raids, is the idea that once again both sides aren't listening to each other, right? You know, hardcore players don't really care about gating people out of content whatsoever, and that's what, you know, they'll be accused of a lot of the time. They just want the content to actually be engaging and difficult and challenging. And casual players don't want the game to be trivial. They really don't care whatsoever if people are doing this really try-hard stuff, right, at a higher level and min-maxing and doing that. I think it's completely irrelevant to a huge amount of the player base, but what they do want is they do want access to this aspect of the story, which again is a perfectly reasonable demand. What both sides don't realize is that they can compromise very easily and everyone can win, right? But instead they just attack each other on things that aren't really what they're saying, and you end up with the absolute clown fiesta that is the Guild Wars 2 community, right? We're all on the same boat, guys. We should be cooperating, not setting fire to it.
We're all in the same skiff, fishing in the same
I like
water.
it. That's big.
All right. So let me clarify my position a little bit, because I think I probably misspoke, and I realized that after listening. Okay, so I don't think I agree that it's probably not the best way to go about getting people to improve, right? If you make story too difficult and it becomes inaccessible for people, you want your story to perhaps be the most accessible content. So that wouldn't work. I still stand by that it would be nicer if, and this is purely my bias, my preference, and I acknowledge that this would not work maybe for an MMO today, but it's my preference that in a game, when something is touted as being very powerful or whatever, that it kind of is. Now, it doesn't have to, and it's relative, right? It doesn't have to be raid level, right? But it should have something where it can kill you, right? And in Guild Wars 2, so going back, this is what I originally asked you, Preston, is I think that you don't like the story because really it's kind of meaningless if they constantly, for a player like you, because you are very good at the game at this point. You do lots of raids. And I'm kind of in the same boat in that I do lots of raids. So now when I go into story and they say this is the strongest dragon ever, I'm like, well, okay, I guess. But like, there are all these other things hiding in the aerodrome that are way stronger than this. So it feels weird, right? It feels weird to have the game constantly tell me that these are the strongest things when they're not, right? Now, that doesn't mean that it would work to make them like raid boss, and I wouldn't want them to be like raid bosses. But I guess that's what I've got to say. It's such a weird situation because you want it to be accessible, but to me, only to me, perhaps, my bias is that the story suffers as a result. That's it.
Okay, so I think you're kind of right, because I think you're giving too much credit to the player character, because a lot of what the player character does is doing what Timey says, while other people organize giant groups and giant forces to all come together and shoot the dragon out of the sky, and then the player character comes together with Aurene and they chase it down through the mists, and then after it's severely weakened, they blow it up, and then they go in for the final kill with everybody. And so you have a lot more power and a lot more force behind what you're doing in the story. And in raids, the lore is that you're just an arbitrary group of 10 people who are making a raiding party to go in and loot places, and then you get caught up in some kind of a plot and go through it. Like, it's side story, it's trivial, and anytime it's referenced in the story, it's just like, oh yeah, this group of people, they did this thing in this place, and they're never given any names. Like, I don't even think I would consider that as you being the commander when you go into a raid party, because there are 10 other commanders there, 10 other player characters, and you're just emulating a raiding party of 10 nameless people. Whereas in the story, you have the Vigil behind you, you have the Pact, you have all of these powerful groups, you have a fucking dragon with you, and Balthazar, like, for example, since that was what was brought up, Balthazar is like a disgrace god that got memed by Palawa Joko and memed him, and he's out of his realm. He has been weakened, he wasn't revived correctly, and he came role playing as Lazarus, and there's all this stuff, and he spent time trying to infiltrate and study and gather information about the player and what was going on, because he thought Aurene was a threat. And so just you going in and like 1v1ing him and beating him isn't unreasonable, because he wasn't really the strongest thing ever. At some point he may have been, but he's perpetually been weakened, and you just get to go and you fight him 1v1, and then you're the badass. And there's a point also earlier in like Draconis Mons or whatever where he's much more powerful, and he's just like, fuck you, you can fight my dogs because you're not worthy of fighting me. And then he just gets weak. But it's in Kralkatorrik is the same way. Like, you go underground and you fight Kralkatorrik in a cave, and you like shoot its eyes out, and then you do actually die, but you already died before, right? And so you're not actually dead, and you just come back. So there is like the death state. Like, see, I hate the fucking story, but I have to actually admit that it's very consistent and it makes sense, and it's structured in such a way that I don't think that having the fail state makes any sense, because there kind of are fail states. You do actually die as a player. There are things that comment on you, like there are enemies or people, NPCs, that comment on you saying, oh, you seem like you've been to the mists. Oh, there's something weird about you. Like, the story is fine. I think it's just bad. You can have something that's consistent and something that works, but it can also be bad.
I mean, do you not think this is kind of an issue with the whole Chosen One
And then,
style of
hold on,
story?
hold on,
though,
hold
don't
on,
you
hold
think?
on. No. I have to
That's
actually.
what I'm getting
Oh,
at.
no.
Yeah.
Is the chat? Are you angered by the chat, Brazil? Is the chat?
I don't
activated?
care what Brazil's misunderstanding. Here's the thing: I don't care what you have to say because I'm right. But also, like, the thing about Guild Wars 1 being like the story where you can fail. Let me tell you a little story about Guild Wars 1 story being very hard. So ArenaNet added these things called heroes, and these things, like, I AFK'd Shiro on a Spirit Bomber Ritualist with heroes while he just teleported around, and the heroes DPS'd him, and the heroes healed each other, and I just moved spirits around, and I AFK'd the fight. I killed Shiro in 9 minutes. And then I realized there's like some achievement or whatever for killing him in like under a minute or something. So I took an assassin in with my same hero loadout, and this was the second time I ever killed him. I killed him in 15 seconds with an assassin, with heroes. It's just like Guild Wars 1 is unforgiving, but I don't think it's even really any harder than Guild Wars 2. When I was playing it a while back and was like really into it, I was conflating the two, like being unforgiving with being difficult. I don't think it's actually any more difficult than Guild Wars 2.
There's a bit of a difference here, though. Like you're saying, you're taking some.
Please go
what
ahead.
I'm thinking is like when a newish player is going through all of these campaigns the first time, they're not gonna have shadow form and do this like insane strat. But the issue is that in Guild Wars 2, they go through and they never fail, right? Like they are very low chance of fail. And when I say that, I mean you don't never have to like reset or whatever. Like you can throw yourself at the boss, die, hit respawn, and throw yourself at the boss again. And you never have to like adjust, you never have to think about your skills or whatever. You just throw. And eventually if you throw yourself at the wall enough times, the wall explodes and you reign supreme and you get your story mission done. But in Guild Wars 1, if you got absolutely hard countered by something because of your team comp or whatever, you had to be like, all right, I better bring some hex removal.
Yeah.
Guild Wars 2, you just eat those condies until the thing dies. You just keep hitting reset, right? That's what I'm talking about. The problem with that is that when you reward failure, right? You're constantly rewarding failure. You're saying, oh, you didn't put the right skill on, but it doesn't matter because you're going to get through this no matter what. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily wrong, but it has big consequences. Big consequences for the game, how it's played, open world, later for people trying to get into raids and fractals. It's a major consequence. Accessibility is a good thing, but it also can have some side effects, and that's one of them. That doesn't mean that we need to make the story inaccessible, but look at what happens when it's like that, when it's that extreme. That's all I'm saying.
But that's the same in every MMORPG.
What Sneb's getting at, every modern MMORPG.
I would just say every modern video
Yeah.
game. I think it's just every game like that now is the case.
Oh, well, it's modern. Like he's the last.
And it's not even video games. It's card games and tabletop games too now. It's every type of gaming.
Yeah, in Guild Wars 1, you didn't have to have like a perfect build, but you did have to counter what was before you, right? If you go into a zone that has 1 million hexes, you couldn't be like, well, herdy-dur, I'm not going to put any hex removal on, and I'm just going to kill everything. No, the hexes would eventually would either just make it so painful to go through, or you would die. And when you died, you got death penalties.
Yes.
So continuing is more and more difficult. And sometimes, let's say you were trying to clear the whole zone or whatever, if you had 60% death penalty, you might not be able to continue. So you were forced to think about and counter what was before you. That's what I'm talking about. In the story in Guild Wars 2 and in much of the open world content, you never have to think about that ever, because you can constantly throw yourself at the world bosses, at the story, and you never receive any sort of feedback on your build. That's the thing, right? The feed, like if you die, you're just like, who cares, right? I'm just gonna run back and I get the same reward. There's no penalty, and that's it. Now, the reality is that this is the way that games are played now. All I'm saying is that this has a consequence, and we feel this consequence a lot. And this is why there's a major divide between the elite camp, right, and the casual camp. Is because the casual camp has never been forced in any way to try to fix their build, because they gain all the same validation that anyone else would. They get all the same rewards. They complete the story. Nothing prevents them. That's accessibility, and that's okay. But there is something that happens when you do that. And so I guess the sort of philosophical question I'm posing here is, how do you create accessibility but still push people enough to where they have to sort of strategize or think a little bit? Not so much that they want to quit the game or whatever, but that they'll interact and engage with different parts of the game.
You're already doing it.
Well,
you're already doing it, Sneb. Like you're doing, like, let me just talk for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, so what, like, and this is a broader conversation, and this goes to a word that MightyTeapot said that is one of the most important words in the world today for everyone, and it's access. Access is important for everyone to have experiences, to have rewarding, positive experiences that means that they continue to do a thing so that everyone can enjoy it together in a way that, you know, is awesome. Guild Wars was a very different game to Guild Wars 2. Like the comparisons, like, they're just completely different games, I'm afraid. Like they're just, you know, there's black and there's white. Like these massive differences, like it's just, they're not the same. The abilities, the story, okay, cool. But they're completely different games with different experiences. The Guild Wars 1 was about those instances where you're going through this content and, you know, that's the game. That's the difficulty. If you made that really, really easy, you're taking away everything that Guild Wars was for so many people because of that challenge. But Guild Wars 2, and we're talking about the modern day experience, gives people more access. We're talking about a modern day society where people are given access to many, many things a lot easier in some ways, and a lot and less so in many, many different ways, i.e. raids. The way that we move forward as a community is like this podcast, where you get the sides talking together in a conversation which is respectful and awesome, to the point where we either agree to disagree or we all agree. And you know, we go further with that conversation, which is what Teapot is trying to do, which is very good. And that's what we do. That's what you do, Sneb. You're already doing it. You're doing the things. You're talking to people. You're telling them. You're stating your boundaries. This is your area. You're saying this is what I want people to have when they come into my raids. I want you to have exotic gear. I want you to have this kind of stuff, and that's fine. Then you've got other communities where, you know, like mine, where it's probably maybe a little bit easier to get into that. And you know, then Teapot or whatever, depending on what he's running on the day, whether or not you want to go hardcore into it, you want to go tournaments, you want to just have a laugh with 10 thieves or whatever, I don't know. And then you've got what Brazil wants to do as well, which could be anything. Probably fishing. But you know, I mean, I think a lot of it is communication, respect, access is really so important, and I think you're already doing essentially part of that.
But it shouldn't be my responsibility to do it.
Yeah, he's talking about the game.
That's what I'm saying. I'm talking about the game. The game is not doing players a favor by constantly rewarding them for failure. Now, I want to make this very clear. I'm not saying we need to make the game inaccessible. I'm saying that every once in a while, it would be cool if the game prompted you and said, you just ate a crap ton of conditions. You should think about putting Condi removal on, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is that that doesn't happen unless maybe you're playing PvP or World versus World, and another player, which again is the player, comes at you and absolutely decimates you with a Condi bomb. Then you're like, oh, well, I guess if I fight that player again, I better do something.
Game that does that. What games do that?
Well, is what you're saying, are you saying basically, like, I think I understand more of what you're saying now. And I think I actually agree with you on this position. Because effectively we have a ladder, and there are like 2 rungs at the bottom, and there is like 1 rung somewhere towards the middle but kind of high, and then 1 at the top. And if you want to get to the top, you have to figure out how to jump up them. You can't just go up 1 rung at a time, because it's incredibly accessible at the bottom, but the game doesn't, like you said, it doesn't teach you how to do anything to get to the very top rung. Yeah, am I correct? Or I'm not trying to straw man you.
He's getting at how the game, although very accessible, it never actually provides any pushback against you, no matter what you do. Like, your actions in the game are totally inconsequential, essentially, with regards to clearing the story.
And I say this because I am now woke after 6 years of playing only exotic berserker with grenades. I only used grenades. I walked around and I pressed 1 everywhere, except when I PvP'd. Right? When I PvP'd, I actually had to use my skills. But in open world, I was like, I'm just going to press the grenades. Like, everything seems to die.
To try and change that, though, as a pet, like.
Well, I'm not.
Did you enjoy?
I feel like
he's not saying it's bad. He's saying that it's a consequence. He's describing a fact, right?
Yes, exactly, Teapot. I really want to make that clear, because I feel like people can go at me and be like, "You're trying to make the game inaccessible." No. I'm saying this is where games are now. The issue is that does have a consequence, right? The consequence is that players don't engage with the game as well. And so when those same players progress on, they play for however long, and they're like, oh, I want to go try raids. They don't know what attributes mean because they've never had to. They've never had to look it up. They don't really know what their gear does because they've never really had to be engaged with that.
Do you not think this is a really big problem, though, with the game itself in a lot of ways? Because I think I was thinking about solutions, because the obvious next question is, like, how do we make this happen, right, Sneb? In my opinion, the only way you can do this is by, 1, inherently making the game inaccessible, or you simplify the game. You know what? A really good example of this, actually, is New World. New World, in my opinion, is actually a game that can be difficult in some ways with a skill cap to it, but it's also extremely accessible because the game is very simple. It's an extremely simple game compared to anything else. Like, you don't have that many abilities to use. You only have effects when you're using a certain weapon, if you swap away from it, you don't have any of those passes anymore. It's not like a trait line, right? Like where you have all the traits active, you don't have all the weapon skills at the same time. You only have a certain set, all the passives and bonuses associated with it. When you only have it when you have that weapon. I think that in a way, the complexity of Guild Wars 2, and maybe even a lot of MMOs, in a way, inherently makes this impossible, right? Because a lot of the things that you're talking about here, yeah, they are really important mechanics, but they're also incredibly complicated mechanics in a lot of ways. In some ways, Guild Wars 1 kind of had this problem as well, right? Because I think a lot of players would try and they just get like annihilated by stuff that they didn't quite understand how it works, particularly if you do stuff like the harder story missions in Guild Wars 2. I think people like really got bamboozled, stuff like Thunderhead Keep rather than stuff like this. I get smashed into oblivion as well. But this happens in Guild Wars 2, but to an even greater degree, because the game is 1,000,000 times faster than Guild Wars 1, right? It's also 1,000,000 times more complicated than Guild Wars 1 as well in terms of all the overlapping systems. Guild Wars 1 had loads of skills and abilities, right? But ultimately, you didn't have that many of them at the same time coming at you. In Guild Wars 2, you have 1,000 different systems that all interlock, right? You have utility skills, weapon skills, stats, runes, sigils, traits, right? All these different things are going on all at the same time. And then you've got dodging, then you've got positioning, right? Like then you have conditions, you have boons, and then you have unique effects too, right? Like which is an even more complicated thing there as well. And I understand that fail states are very, very important, but I think that these two things are actually fundamentally opposed. I think accessibility and the game teaching you how to play are fundamentally different. And the example I would get, fundamentally opposed rather, and the reason I would say it is because, again, look at the Eater of Souls, right? Like there were actual forum posts, guys, saying that the Eater of Souls is impossible. Okay, they could not get past the Eater of Souls. It was. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing. That's not funny. Okay, there were people
it is.
Yeah, who could not beat it, right? Okay, and simply could not get past, right, the Eater of Souls. And there are a lot of things like this. This is not the first thing that happened in there. For example, if, do you remember the Head of the Snake story where you fight Corticus in the story? That got nerfed really hard because there were like mobs that would spawn, like the Jade Armors would spawn during the fight, and people could not deal with them. They didn't understand the break bar in particular, and so they basically removed them. It doesn't happen anymore because it was too hard, right? There were a lot of things in the game that are just kind of too difficult for people, even in its like really, really easy state. Like the game is still the kind of challenge that you want, Sneb, it already weirdly enough exists for quite a lot of people. A lot of people will actually do these story missions and go like, holy shit, that was engaging, right? Like, damn, like that boss got me good a few times, right? It took me a while to get that guy down, you know? Like this kind of happens already. It's just that it's never going to be doable for all skill levels, right? It's just not going to happen because of how skill dependent Guild Wars 2 really is. In a lot of respects, Guild Wars 2's greatest enemy in this area is itself. The game is too skill based, and the game. And I'm not saying that. Obviously, I'm not saying they should make it less skill based, but the game is the way you perform in Guild Wars 2 is so dictated by the knowledge you have of the game and how good you are at the game. I think it's almost impossible to actually create something that will actually get you from all the way at the start, from all the way at the top. Because essentially, at that point, you have to start saying, right, use Berserker gear, use these traits, use this build, right? And I think that's what that's what ArenaNet probably really wants to avoid, right? Is saying this is the correct way to play the game, because that's essentially what the whole like learning how the game works is implying, right? Like it's telling you this is what you need to do to beat this. And in a way, Guild Wars 2 has been set up the exact opposite. It's never been the game that tells you this is the correct way to play. And I don't know. I mean, I'd almost want to agree with you, Sneb, on this, and I do in terms of the facts, right? I think, you know, you've pointed out like a really key fact in this conversation, and it's absolutely right. But I think just solving it to me seems impossible And the correct way is to deal with the problem afterwards rather than addressing the source, which I hate saying because I know that's a very unsatisfying thing, right? Like in general, you always want to attack like the root cause of a problem. But in this case, I think it's so baked in to the way the game is, you'd have to fundamentally change Guild Wars 2 to actually address the root cause of this inaccessibility problem, right? Like, or rather unlearning problem, not inaccessibility. Like the only alternative would be making the game more inaccessible and more challenging, right? To force players to think about this stuff, because as of right now, I don't actually think it can be done with the current framework. And you have to say, instead of going, okay, we're going to make people better at the game, you have to instead say, there are going to be players of different skill levels in the game. How do we make a compromise that works for as many people as possible? Is the approach I think you're forced to take, which is essentially difficulty modes.
Yeah, I agree with that. The one issue, again, it comes back to this divide, right? The problem that we're discussing is the reason that there is such a divide, such vitriol, such animosity and aggression between the casual player base and the hardcore player base, in my opinion. The casual players, they go, why aren't you letting me play how I want? Because the game lets me, right? Why are you not letting me do this? Why are you, right? And then the hardcore players are like, you just need to read your skills. You just need to read your skills. And then the casual players are like, what do you mean, right? There's no, I don't know. And so I'm posing this question out there to the void. When does the game teach you about your attributes? Is there ever a point in time where it says
level 4 or 5? I literally did a podcast on the new player experience on Friday. When we played through the level experience, we got to level 7 and we were told about precision power and different stats at level 4 or something. There's a little pop-up in the top left-hand corner. Yes, it's not massively suitable, but it does tell you what the stats are and what they do. So that is actually in the game, but it's a very tiny point in the game very, very early on, which is new, which comes along with many new achievements. So
when you're already overwhelmed by like the grandeur of the game, perhaps.
You've got to understand, right? So like, I mean, you don't want to just plaster people with all this stuff, because Guild Wars 2 is already a completely different MMORPG experience, especially then. The only games that were similar was Warhammer Online, which had the PQ public quest system, and Rift probably with their dynamic event system, as well as like maybe Dark Age of Camelot. Like these were the systems that Guild Wars 2 got their systems from, like originally. Like the Guild Wars 2 systems aren't massively original. They just did them very, very well. But the combat is, of course, it's very unique. But like early on, like these systems aren't taught to you. Like condition removal isn't really a thing, because conditions in the core game aren't inherently massively impactful on your character until you start getting to like ore, right? And even then, doesn't really matter. Like a lot of that early experience for the player, and a lot of people can just bypass that experience completely if you just buy the game, and then you're not even learning because you're just going to Heart of Thorns. The amount of players that are going straight to Heart of Thorns content right now is phenomenal. A lot of people, as streamers, like I as a streamer, and I'm sure as streamers yourselves, you will tell someone, please go and play the game from level 1 to 80. You are missing.
Well, I actually don't necessarily. I think Teapot has a similar view on this, but what I tell people is, if you're a gameplay focused player and you want to jump into raids, fractals, etc. right now, you may hate the leveling experience, and that's a great possibility.
Aren't you fighting your own point though? By telling people to do
that? Debate.
Like, I mean,
what do you mean?
Isn't it? Because they're bypassing the whole learning experience of the game.
Well, but there are so I just had like 5 mythic raiders come into my stream recently and want to get into raids like immediately, and so what I did was, they said that they hated leveling. They were like level 20 and they're like, can I just boost? And I was like, well, you can, but know that if you do that, it may be a bit overwhelming to you, because there's going to be a lot for you to learn. If you're okay with that and you're willing to read what all your skills do, and you're really willing to read your traits, and you're willing to understand what the attributes do, and jump into that full, like head on, then do it. If you need a bit of a more gradual experience, you get a new utility skill, right? then you should level 1 to 80. And so I've had people do both, and both are successful. So it depends, right? Some players absolutely hate the leveling experience, and their pure joy in the game is learning those complexities. And so if they're that kind of player, boosting is actually a good thing for them. But it is a small portion of people that can do that effectively. That's it.
Yeah, I just say play the game until you start getting bored, then boost, right? Is the general approach I would have. Like, kind of get into it, see how things are going, right? And then if you want to get into it, then get into it. Because I think the alternative is people get kind of quit, right? They just get bored and quit, right? And I don't think that's ever a desirable outcome. But yeah, sorry, go ahead, Jeb.
You can't teach. This game is very difficult. If it's like in PvP, there is a reason why you can go into PvP at level 3 now, I think it is officially in the game. And that's because there is a whole section again, especially when like Pro League was around. Like that's a different conversation. But they wanted to promote like the esports area of the game, and they should never have said that. That the competitive part of the game, and to get people into the game as if it was a completely different part of the game. So imagine like League of Legends access Guild Wars 2. That's almost a section, that part of the game. I mean, they've done it themselves from day one. Like no one teaches you anything. Like level 3, you're bang in there. And again, you talking about that will and desire to learn. I think if we teach people too much, like, and this is coming from me, bear in mind that probably the person who's called like one of the most PMA Guild Wars 2 streamers there are, mate, must be like, you know, mental health counselor, therapist, and all these things. And it's, but still, I say, there is a point where there has to be a will and desire to learn some of this stuff as well, like from yourself, from TeaTime, from Brazil, from me, whoever they want to go and watch on YouTube. And I think that's inherently part of the MMORPG experience. And I do agree with you that nowadays, yes, we do give people easier experiences so they can access things. But I think that's also because like there's so many different kinds of people playing video games nowadays, and access is very important. There's people who have disabilities. There's people I have many people in my community who are blind, for example. There are many people in my community who, you know, can't use their hands properly. You know, there are people out there that want to engage and witness story, and they want to witness amazing experiences and be rewarded for them in a way which they can do that. And in Guild Wars 2, the most basic, easy experience you can have is telling a story through the most, not inside a raid, but in that way where people can play it and they can complete it. And the Era of Souls example is, you know, a bit, you know, one of those isolated incidents that, you know, people have kind of got over time. But ArenaNet is one of those companies. And if we look at what they do, we talk about the LGBTQI plus community, we talk about different communities, we're talking about access, we're talking about disability, we're talking about raising money for kids, you know, we're talking about all these different causes that they celebrate. The story and being able to access and complete that in an easy way feels like just a thing which is like, you know, that's okay. But like, I get what you're saying, Sneb. I don't want to make you think I've not heard you.
I don't know if you do though, because
because you're saying like,
what you just said, I feel like insinuates that I'm saying that those people, you know, that we would make it too hard for them. I'm not putting any sort of judgment on accessibility. I am purely saying that the level of accessibility in Guild Wars 2 has a consequence, both good and bad, and that's okay. But we need to understand that the negative side of that is this, and how do we help that, right? I'm being very, very careful here because I'm worried that people are going to think that I'm like toxic, anti-accessibility, or exactly. Like I'm actually terrified of this.
He's scared.
Every time you mention that, Jebro, I feel like I have to say I'm not against that, right? I am not against that. I'm just saying that the reality of the situation is this.
Yeah, and I guess, like, well, I think the conversation here, the discussion is what do you attack? Do you attack the source of the problem, or do you attack the symptom of the problem? And in my opinion, you attack the symptom, not the cause. Here's a great example. We were talking about the stats tooltip, right? You can introduce stats and like what power precision do who the fuck is going to remember that through 80 levels of leveling? Who even knows what that means? And here's the issue. Like, everyone in the chat's like, oh, you can explain. You can say get Berserker gear. But here's the problem. That doesn't mean anything. You guys are all coming from the perspective of knowing that that's good, right? How does a player know that this is good? Right? How does a player know that going full Berserker is the correct answer? Or going full Viper is the correct answer? Or using this rune is the correct answer? Or going full damage pretty much all the time is the correct answer? The answer is they don't, right? And there's no way you can concisely express that in Guild Wars 2 without either giving information that will eventually change because builds and strategies change over time, right? Or two, prescribing exactly how to play the game, which is really clunky, right? That's jank, right? You don't want to say, okay, you're playing Necromancer, you're going to play Condi Scourge at level 80. Well, you don't want to do that, right? Like, that's not what you want to do. You want to try and introduce players to mechanics and have this very diverse array of builds and options. And I think this is where the problem is around this discourse, is because people only see it from their perspective. Like, there's this really amazing video, actually. I can't remember what game it was about, but it was by a guy who played games for a long time, and he introduced someone who'd never played games before, right? And he was shocked that it turned out that this person didn't realize that the spacebar was the jump button, right? But that's so obvious, right? Every game has the spacebar being the jump button. But why do you know that? Like, you know that because you know that. And here's the issue. In Guild Wars 2, the best way to understand the game is to already understand the game, right? There's no easy route in the game that is going to give you the right answer, right? Like, the way to know the right answer is to already know. Okay, I think this was said about differential equations. Funny enough, that's a very nerdy thing to say, I guess. But yeah, I think the the best way to solve differential equations is to already know the solution. But yeah, that's basically what it is, guys. Yeah, like, and this is the core problem, which is why, in my opinion, you catch people at the end rather than at the start. Because I think that Guild Wars 2 is so complicated, and the game is so long, right? It's such a long game, right? It's going to take you thousands of hours to get through everything in it, that there is no way you can concisely explain it in such a convincing and specific way that it will stay with people through their entire journey, but simultaneously it's vague enough that you aren't just telling them exactly what to do, right? Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
I think we're encountering a wicked problem. Where whenever we try to solve the problem, it creates another problem, right? So no matter what we would do with, helping players, learn the game better, or fixing that divide between the casual player base and the elite player base, so to speak, no matter what we do, we're creating a new problem. And so that's why there's really no perfect way to solve this. And you alluded to that earlier, Teapot. There's just no way that you can fix this issue, because if you try to get to the root of it, you just create another problem. So basically you have to medicate, like fix symptoms, right?
Me have idea Oonga Boonga.
Oh, let's go. Initiate.
Yeah, so this is actually a feature that's already in the game in some places. And I think it would be curious to see them add it to other places too. And curiously, they had opted to add it somewhere else in the game, but they never did. And that's leaderboards. So you've got leaderboards for stuff like the Griffin races and some of the Mount races and the Art of Thorns adventures. But what if you had leaderboards for Big Nose Ted or Kralkatoric? So you could just go in, and after you finish it, you could submit your run to the leaderboard. If you want to, it could give you a prompt to submit your time. And then you could see other people's times, but let's take it another level. You can see their time, and the fastest times or any of the other times, you can just click on it and copy their build template to your character. Or even crazier, you can get a log, because we have logs. Like we can do that. We have logs. You can pull a log and you can see their rotation. What if we do shit like that? Like, we have this. We have all of this stuff third party. All of this is third party. But the problem with third party is that people don't want to have to take the step to go and download something. People don't want to have to do all that. Like, you only download third-party add-ons if you're really motivated to do the harder content anyways and to be good at it. That's the only reason you would do that. But if you have a feature like leaderboards or something cool like that in the game, that just seems like it could be a cool balance. Now, obviously, there are problems because I know some people who have allegedly lagged really hard in Griffin races and finished the Griffin races in like 2.5 seconds. So we have to figure out like how exploiting is going to work, because there's shit like that on all of the leaderboards. You have people that have,
You took fights, Brazil. You saw like strikes.
Yeah. Like you could do it on strikes. You could do it on fractals. You could do it. Fractal leaderboards.
You need to play veteran. You need to play single player arena in ESO, because Elder Scrolls Online do that without the actual build.
But here's the thing.
Really good system. That's a good idea. It's solid. I like it.
And you could do it on the story stuff too. Like, you could do it on all of the story bosses. Like, you could do it on Lazarus. Lazarus would be a really damn cool one to do it on. You could do it on the Centaur and Dry Top or whatever. You could do it on a bunch of places. And so that way people in the story could say, oh man, that boss is hard. Balthazar, the Eater of Souls, took me 3.5 hours to kill. I wonder what the fastest time was. The fastest time was 2 minutes. How did this person do it so fast? I want to copy their build. And you just click on it, copy build template, and it says, here, damn you, ArenaNet. Damn you. Here's the thing. No, see, you have to do this now. I've won. See, you have to listen to me. Because you're out of build templates, and you click copy build template.
And then you buy them. Yeah.
You're out of build templates. Would you like to buy another build template to copy this build? So you can kill Eater of Souls faster than 3 hours? Fuck you, I win. I win.
Like a major part of the game for Arena.
Put me on your board of directors if you want to make more money. But shit, like, they could do that and it would be so good. It would be so good.
I think leaderboards are good, yeah.
Didn't they do that in PvP like ages ago, before they changed the builds? They actually gave you some recommended builds that you could click, and you could actually like assign them, or like at the beginning of your experience, or it gave you a build as well when you enter that content. When you enter the content right now, it still gives you like a little bit of like fixes around your gear a little bit. So like there are these kind of mini systems which are in the game, but I think when you go to raids, I think there is like this there's this thing about, you know, wanting to go and do a little bit of research, or even just going in there blind, like kind of what Brazil said, like with new people, and just going in there blind and kind of just finding out some of this stuff. And I wonder sometimes, is that something that we've kind of lost as maybe as a predicament of what kind of Sneb's saying, you know, because we're kind of given stuff on a plate, which I think is what you're saying. And I'm trying to say that I do understand and I respect what you're saying as well. But like, you know, that desire to want to go and do that because we are maybe like fed with a spoon specifically, which is an important part of the process. You know, it's about growing up, I guess. But we go out on our own into the big wide world and we find out, you know, maybe we should be doing it this way, maybe we should be doing it that way. If I do it my way, is it going to be helpful to the people I'm playing with? Because that's part of the experience. Like, I can't just think about me in this. I have to think about my team. So no, I think it's very difficult. Like, I think the whole like argument between like elite player and like casual player has been something that's been around for as long as you can play a game. Do you know what I mean? You know, think about back in the day, you know, like paper scissors.
Yeah, Billy Mitchell and fucking Donkey Kong.
Oh boy.
I mean, around like it's speed running and like speed running flipping Minesweeper. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's always been like to bring you like the conversation around, because I think like this topic brings up or can have the potential to spiral out into every single facet of Guild Wars 2 and gaming, or anything where you have to do an activity that you can ever think of. Because, you know, you're talking about the professional versus the beginner or the casual person who does a thing. It's just like, it's a difficult conversation. It's a good one. It's a good one to have. Enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really challenging. It's so challenging because I'm very conflicted, right? Because obviously I've been sort of advocating for a little bit of a meritocracy here in a sense, but at the same time, I do understand and want things to be accessible. I want to just provide an idea of a solution, right? In open world, when you go to a world boss, you almost have to try to get
fail.
like bronze or silver, right? Like
Yeah.
you like you know how you get rewards, and the difference between bronze and silver and gold are very low, right? And so this is a very very accessible content, very good. But the issue is that let me pose an actual scenario to you. I went into a Drakkar run, and I think Teapot's heard me talk about this. I went into a Drakkar run, and I hadn't been doing any open world stuff in a while. And I joined a solid 50 squad. Every player was present, right? I had arc DPS up. I did 15% of the damage out of those 50 people. 15%. And I got the exact same reward as the person who did 0.3. And that, to me, is problematic. This content is accessible, but it rewards people for AFKing, right? This is a big issue in open world events, right?
This is a big drag as well right now, actually, as well.
Yeah,
this is a huge problem right now.
It's a huge issue. Like, I have 30 accounts. I could take, and I don't do this, by the way, but I could take all 30 of, I don't. I could take all 30 of my accounts, and I could put them in Dragonstorm every day and have them swing their sword one time, and suddenly I'd get gold rewards, 2 gold, and I'd be good to go. This is perhaps an unintended consequence of accessibility here. And so what do you do to maintain that accessibility, but create some sort of aspiration for people, right? Because, I mean, there was that podcast with Deeg recently. I forget who he talked to, but they were talking about aspirational content. The data shows that people like the aspirational content. You can implement something like that in open world or somewhere where there's a really low bar for entry, where people still will get rewards, still feel involved, and it's still accessible. But it will also kind of nudge them and say, hey, I don't want to be rude here, but this guy did 15%. We're going to give him double the gold. You did 0.3, so we're going to give you half. Right?
I wonder if I can shut this down really hard.
Let's go.
Might be
Grouch
able
activated. To. What's Sneb's
Grouch?
in-game
Did you
name?
say-
Asking for a
Grouch
friend?
in the chat. Let's call Grouch. We're going to get Grouch in here, and he's going to ban Sneb for AFK Dragonstorm.
Actually, speaking of banning
There it
people, Grouch, there's this Drakkar griefer that Sneb knows. Sneb is really good friends with this particular individual that griefs Drakkar. It's anyways. But so here's the thing. If there is a massive difference between silver, bronze, and gold rewards, what do the griefers do? Do the griefers go and ensure that every Drakkar is bronze? Because let me tell you something about Goon Squad. They will ensure that every Drakkar until the end of time is bronze. So no one gets the gold reward. They will do that. And you know they'll do that because you've experienced it. In your face, like you've got the 1,000-yard stare right now on your face because you know I'm right. But here's the other thing. What if you made Drakkar? What if you just made Drakkar instance into a strike mission and you had 10 people, or a 50-man squad instance where you could go in that you organize up? Do you do as a guild or as a 10 people
yeah,
thing?
I mean, they're kind of doing that, right? Like that's positive. I actually really like that. I really like the direction they went with Dragonstorm and ArenaNet, making it so you have the ability at any time to go in with a squad. I think that's excellent. I love it. I wish they had that for Drakkar because I would have kept that community going. The issue is that the public ones, it just gets worse then, right? Like that problem where people are AFKing or they're going in, they're a new player, they've all soldiers gear, they don't know any better, they just don't know, right? I can't be angry at them. That serves no purpose. I can try to help them or whatever, but they just don't know, right? It's not their fault.
Do you think
But-
Marionette is an opportunity for people? I actually think the Marionette public instance is very good because I think it's teaching people.
Agreed.
Because they're talking to each other in those maps. No bullshit. They are. I literally witnessed it yesterday. They're talking to each other in those maps and they're talking about the strats of the actual maps. Every time I've done it every day this week. At least
Why
once.
are they doing that though? Because the content is actually difficult because it requires individual responsibility. What I'm saying is that there's very few other things like Marionette is like my dream, right? I love it because it punishes the players that do not like that they just aren't putting in any effort.
What
right?
is it? Though? What is that whole thing? What is the basicness of the Marionette? Is the fact that it is an option to do it. You can go and do it, and you have the option to get involved. And again, that's you wanting to put yourself into this position of playing.
What if there was story though as well?
What, like with the instanced?
Yeah, let's suppose that there was actually lore attached to beating the Marionette, and afterwards there was like a cutscene of some kind or some kind of dialogue that kind of gave you some extra insight into the past event that was attainable nowhere else in the game. And this is what I mean, where you're going to run into the exact same issue. Because when you said it's in its own separate and it's optional, what's actually special about the Marionette? It's inherently inaccessible. It has personal responsibility, and it has a very hard fail state that if even like one or two people mess it up, everyone's going to lose. Right? Everyone loses if a few people make a mistake, right? And yeah, you love it. But the thing is that this is kind of what I was talking about.
Everything can't be like that. Everything can't be like that.
The thing is, it's
Otherwise
inherently inaccessible. Like if this was added into the game as a world boss, ArenaNet would nerf it. There is absolutely no way around that. Like particularly if it had story around it, like they would nerf it. Like the only exception to this would be something like Triple Trouble, right? Triple Trouble is even harder than the Marionette, I think, broadly. But the thing is, no one fucking does Triple Trouble outside of organized communities, right? Like public events are going to fail really hard with Triple Trouble.
Not many people do that either. Now they've even stopped. Like, but the thing is that it is accessible to the point where this is where you have to define accessibility, because is accessibility being able to do the thing, or is accessibility being able to do the thing and complete the thing? So it's like, you know, what the meaning of accessibility is, because in Marionette you can get in there and you'll fail, but you'll get the experience of failing at the very least. Whereas raids, most people probably don't have that, probably don't even get the point to getting in there in the first place. Let alone, you know, being
I think
you can just make a group. Like you'll get a group instantly, right? Particularly if you just say, you know, all welcome, fun run, let's go. Like you'll get in there immediately, right?
That's right. You can
on
join
NA. Yeah,
can't do that.
Yeah, it doesn't really, like on NA. If you put fun run, like you're gonna have a really hard time.
You'll get griefed hard.
Yeah,
I think for the record, I think failing the Marionette is actually superior to defeating it, because you get stepped on when you fail, and it's a great experience.
Yeah,
that's what Guild Wars 2 is all about.
Right, I've got to address this, guys. Like like all these LFG. Okay. I'm done with this. Like the Triple Trouble thing is, I'm sorry, guys. You guys got no idea what you're talking about. Yes, I'm aware that Triple Trouble gets cleared a lot of the time on both servers, but this is done by organized groups. You know those LFGs you guys have been joining? Yeah, those are set up by organized groups that actually set it up to deliberately clear the worm. That is the nature of how it goes down. It's not like a bunch of completely random players. What's going on in those Triple Troubles is that the teams that are involved in doing it will have 15 players on every single worm, hard carrying people who don't know what the hell is going on. Like this is the situation with Triple Trouble, right? Only organized groups regularly do Triple Trouble. Even the ones in the LFG are essentially organized groups, not by pug groups. That is how it is, right? Like, oh my God, there it is. Boom, done. All right, Brazil, give me the juice.
Hi. What juice do you want?
I thought when you were about to just bring the juice.
Juice.
Am I getting stepped on?
Yes. A bunch of random comments set up and kill children every day. Yes, exactly. People do set it up during that. People who know what they're doing set it up, Kakia. Oh my God.
Yeah, they do.
What are you
on
talking
NA,
about?
There's legitimately there's a guild called Nope, I think.
Yes.
And they run it pretty consistently. They're very good, very nice folks.
The Dry Top Guild as well that run the NA Dry Top.
Yeah, Sand is awesome.
Any sand enjoyers?
Many guilds doing that, and that's the thing. That's the joy of having those communities and those people to help those things. I think like that's essentially what we do. You know, like we're the bridge between the hardcore and the more casual. Because I think in this podcast, I would be probably the more casual representative of like raiders and PvE, like whatever. Whereas like I would like to think that I'm relatively okay at the game, but I just want to get these people involved in these experiences because they're just the people I enjoy playing with as well. And I think, you know, we can do that as like people, as like community. Like I love the way that Sneb said that they talk to people, telling them about equipment and gear. You know, I love that shit, man. Like that's really good because that helps people to be like, you know, you've got to do it in a way which is, you know, not being an asshole. Like if
hard to do. No.
It's hard to do because you're trying to help someone through text format. Like how do you say to someone, that's not a great way to play, or that's not a great, you know, or your gear isn't great, and even try and write that in a message right now, because it's a difficult way to actually communicate to someone in the first place. Whereas if you're on comms with someone or everything else, you can have a talk about it. But like people don't know how to talk to each other nowadays. It's another conversation.
Yeah.
In-game voice.
Yeah, no. But,
yes.
Jebro, I think I really appreciate you saying that. Because I think people do misconstrue when you're trying to help them, and I think it's because people have had many bad experiences where someone has put them down or diminished their experience or whatever, right? So that when sometimes I'll whisper people and say, "Hey, I need you to be honest. Have you ever done the raid before? Because maybe I'm doing like an experienced run." And it's like silent for a while and they say, "No." And I say, "Thank you for being honest. I am happy to train you another time. But this group had these requirements, and I can tell that you don't know what you're doing, right? And it's affecting the group." But when you say stuff like that over text, no matter how you say it, people can still have the ability to think that guy is putting me down. He's trying to make me have a bad experience. He's gatekeeping the content, blah, 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 blah. They call you toxic. And this is, again, where these two sides have trouble speaking to each other. So, oh no, not the copy pasta.
And look, we've got all the way around. That's exactly the whole point of this, is how do we actually deal with this? And, you know, this is a very, very, very long way of getting to this. But in my opinion, and this is obviously going to come off as incredibly biased given what I do in my spare time, right? I think the community actually is the biggest tool to address this. I think having more engagement between the two communities is key. Right. I think more resources, more streams, more YouTube videos, more stuff on websites about PvP, about raids, about everything, and going over these things, breaking down misconceptions, breaking down what is this? Okay. Hello, professional YouTuber Snebman. Thank you for giving me your rifle core warrior build. Thanks to that build, I was able to join a raid and kill my first raid boss with other raiders, the Chat Garen in Auric Basin. I will now start selling the build to my guildmates and share 50% of the profits with you, as we discussed. Thank you and go. Sneb, do you have any response to this, dude? Like, this is a pretty damning.
It happens every stream. I can't stop it.
Kinky is getting to you everywhere, Sneb. He's coming for you.
Yeah.
I can't stop. It happens every stream.
Yeah, this is big. Okay.
The thing about it, though, is if you read it, it goes away. That's how copy pasta works. Like, once I read it once, then it stops, right? It's over after that.
Yeah.
You just gave chat a challenge and you've lost.
Yeah, now it's going to be, now that's all we're going to see until the end of the stream. This is going to be big now. It's here forever. But yeah.
Like Teapot, that's it, man. Like this is a massively multiplayer online like role playing game. And role playing. We have to role play as good communicators. Can you do it? Can you role play as a good communicator? Can you? I think Brazil can. Brazil can.
We all need to go to Divinity's Reach right now.
God, yeah. Here's the thing. Here's something I want to just throw out there, okay? Like Skyrim, how many versions of Skyrim have they released for all sorts of different content, like for different consoles?
That's right now, mate. There's like more versions coming out.
You can, yeah, like there's like the second special edition with like an updated engine for the second time fucking coming out. Like, and do you know the reason why Skyrim is like the most popular and most played video game of all time? It's because the community makes shit for it.
Mhm.
The community makes mods. Like, not that anyone should do this, but if there were booba mods for Guild Wars 2, do you know how popular Guild Wars 2 would be? But like, for seriously, the
Anyone.
reason that
Yeah.
reason that Skyrim is a thing is because the community carries it. Bethesda makes okay games, but they have a good platform, and the
Mhm.
community will always build on top of it. And
Yeah.
Guild Wars 2, like, we have the opportunity, like, this is the best time in the history of Guild Wars 2. This is the best opportunity we have ever had to build on top of a game that's already great. A game that is fantastic, that we all love. Sneb is literally wearing a headband that says Guild Wars 2 while he talks about his grievances with the game. And look at this, he's got a fucking quaggin, he has shoes, he has all this shit behind him that's Guild Wars 2. Like, as a community, we could come and we could say, there are new people coming in, we're gonna help them out. Or we could say, fuck you, get out of my raid, you noob, your DPS is too low. Like, we have those options. We have those two options. What are people going to step up and do? Because we're all here trying to be positive. We're here trying to make changes. All four of us here right now on the screen.
You're just
But-
showing Guild Wars 2.
Yeah, he's really proud. He has fucking Guild Wars 2 Nikes.
He doesn't have the toaster though. He hates the game.
I don't have the toaster. Everyone always brings it up.
I've got a toaster in the UK. I need to get it sent to me.
Yeah.
Damn. Wait, what? When?
Wait.
When was that?
When was what?
When what?
Sneb is a
The
gamer,
shoes?
dude. He's a gamer.
Dude, I have one of the largest Guild Wars 2 collections, I think, of anyone. I've met one other
Gee.
person who rivals mine. She just has different things.
Sneb actually has a partner program badge and lanyard, even though he's
That
not.
I'll
in the
actually
partner-
Yeah,
have
he's not in the
2
partner
days.
program.
And it's
Hey, you
I
know,
wonder.
Grouch, Grouch and I have like this deal. All right, Grouch and I have this deal. My wife talked to Grouch the other day,
Oh.
and
What? Okay.
listen, I told Grouch that I would name a dog after him if I became partner. All right,
That's what it takes nowadays, probably. Yeah.
and because the deal is, if I ever get ArenaNet partner or Twitch partner, whichever comes first, I'm getting a dog. My wife really wants a dog, and so the way that she lets me keep gaming and streaming is with this vision of a dog on the horizon. Okay.
Sorry. Why is this
So-
man in that partner right now? This needs to change. This has to change.
Look, I've applied 7 times. I'm kind of worried that I'm annoying them now, so I stopped applying.
Just knight him and give him his damn things. Jesus Christ. He's streaming
Yeah,
this guy.
the partner badge that I sent him can only go so far.
This is the change. This is the thing. Communication, man. Like this guy needs to be I'm sorry.
Oh my god. That is content right there. That is some big gaming. I like it. You know, I think I think that's a compelling argument there, Sneb, but like, there's no way you'll get denied now. You're in.
Yo, I'm still waiting. I've tweeted at Grouch and been like, "Yo, we still got this
But
deal
dude,
or what?" Like,
I've got bad news though, dude. Like the thing is, they're gonna watch this podcast now and they're gonna hear you just hating on accessibility, wanting the game to be a
Oh, come
meritocracy, and only the good players get gold. Like saying, "Oh yeah, you get double the gold for getting gold reward compared to bronze on an open world event," and they're gonna go, "Well, this guy, he is so toxic. You know, we cannot allow him in our partner program. We can't have this elitist scum." In the partner
go
program.
look at my Twitter. It's just me shilling Guild Wars 2 constantly. Like I'm like, people, try Guild Wars 2. Try it. Come raid with me. I've like, and on Facebook, I'm doing the same thing. But I'm like practically begging people to come try raids with me. I've got so many people that I started telling people, I'm like, look, I want to compete. I want to start a static. I've had 30 people want to join the static now. I have to make 2. I'm the
Damn.
ultimate Guild Wars 2 fan. So yeah, my dream is hopefully to become partner. Then my wife gets a doggo. There you go. Grouch the doggo. Can you believe Grouch the doggo is just waiting to be adopted by us?
I think he's gone. He's still there.
Yeah.
He's
On that note, I think we've kind of come to a pretty good conclusion. as it were, regarding this. I think we've kind of talked through pretty much all of the issues, starting out with a recent core thing there. Yeah, there's a Teapot weird there from Grouch that you've scared him now, Sneb. You're freaking him out there a little bit, dude. But yeah, Sneb hates accessibility. That's true, guys. That's actually true. You know, like hashtag Sneb hates accessibility, right? Let's get that trending on Twitter real quick. Anyway, yeah, I think we could wrap things up about here with some fantastic introductions. What an amazing show. Thank you guys so much for being here and everyone watching. We've got over 1,000 people watching this live. That is absolutely insane.
One of the most popular tea times you've had in,
yeah, it's a big one. It's a big one. People are into this. I think it's a really important topic, and that's definitely where I'd kind of underline this, right? Is this is a really important issue. And, you know, Brazil was talking about some of the videos that Nemesis had released a very long time ago. This has always been an issue of contention within the Guild Wars 2 community. And I almost feel like it's never really been addressed super well. So I think leading on to the expansion now, I think it's time to actually start talking about it a lot more and see if we can actually find some resolution in the community, because it is a long-standing and big issue that needs to be resolved, or not resolved, but at least tried to be fixed by ArenaNet, and more importantly, I think, by the community. Hashtag Sneb for partner. Exactly right. Look at that. Snebzor goose. Let's get that. Yeah, the cult. Okay, we need to see some Drakkar runs once again, dude. I want to see 3k DPS players on Drakkar, Sneb. We've got to just, let's just give us a safari, right?
I will say, like, I had people that went out and got full Ascended armor and stuff and asked about raid builds just so we could try to get the Drakkar record. Like, I kind of want to go back and do that purely because it actually is a super fun way to inspire players to try to make little adjustments to improve.
Yeah, I think open world is very good for this. It's something that I want to do a lot more of as well, actually. Kind of high performance open world stuff I think is really, really good, because it's kind of accessible in the way that it's not like mechanically difficult. There's not a huge amount of individual responsibility, but it does mean that everyone is important, right? And it's very obvious that everyone's important. So if you can get people with the desire to engage and stuff like that, I think that is actually a really good strategy. Like high performance open world, like going for world boss world records, I think is actually a really good thing to do, because you can kind of carry people a little bit, but they can also feel like, you know, their choices actually mean something. There you go. But anyway, let's go ahead and kind of wrap things up here with some outroductions finishing on a nice PMA wholesome note here as well. Thank you guys for joining me on the show this evening. It's been a long one, coming up to the 3-hour mark, a beast, a monster of a podcast. But gentlemen, tell us a little bit about yourselves here. Sneb, I want to know, how much do you hate casual players? Let me know where we can find you ranting about that. Okay, where you're at, what you're doing, what the hell is going on. Give us the rundown.
Twitch.tv/Snebzor. I am there. I've been streaming almost every day. I've been training raids on NA. Yes, NA Gamer. I've been training raids almost every day. I've gotten well over 100 people their first raid boss kill, and I do it with the mentality that, you know, if you teach a person to fish, they'll be able to fish for a lifetime and feed themselves for a lifetime. So, hey, I'm there. I also am actually working on my first YouTube video right now, and it's 10 core NG raids.
Ooh.
So I'll be on YouTube soon, and I'm on Twitter at Snebzor, and you can chat with me there.
Fantastic stuff. All right, then. A long returning guest, a fellow Englishman himself as well. It is Jebro. Tell us, what are you up to these days?
I am streaming Guild Wars 2 a lot more recently, actually, as well. We do very casual, chill raids, like twice a week, Wednesdays and Saturdays. Anyone can sign up. It doesn't matter how much experience, just have a glider, have some gear, and just come and have a laugh with us. That's what we want to do. But yeah, streaming as well as doing a ton more YouTube content. I play a lot of different games, commentating different games as well as Guild Wars 2 PvP every so often, Sea of Thieves, Elder Scrolls Online, loads of stuff, loads of bits and bobs. For Guild Wars 2, well on that train as well. Twitch.tv/Jebro Unity, Jebro everywhere, doing all the things.
Boom. Easy. Love it. And finally, the man behind Underworld Video, and of course, a notorious member of the Guild Wars 2 community. It is Brazil, aka Underworld Video Preston.
What's up, gamers? So if you are interested in following me, seeing the stuff that I'm up to, you can just find me on Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, UWV_Preston. I don't do a ton of Guild Wars 2 content anymore. I'm going to pick up streaming again very soon. And I have a big streaming project coming up very, very soon. But a lot of the content that I make now is revolved around like kind of work that I do with nonprofits and helping out. I do a lot of work with homeless people, spend time with them, talk with them, try to help them out however I can. And I got involved with another one recently to help recovering addicts. And so I'm doing stuff like that. If any of you are interested in that, you can check out my website. I'll throw it up here in Twitch chat. You can check on that if you want to support me directly to help me be able to continue to do this stuff. I've got art for sale. I don't really have any donations or anything because I would rather you just get something out of giving me money to help with people. But there is a Patreon project set up too, and all of the money that generates is just going to go straight back to people. So you can check that out. That's all on my website too. But yeah, real life is a lot more interesting than video games. So that's what I tend to focus on now, even though PvP still makes me very angry. But that's all I got. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Oh, and then there's me, I guess. Well, you're already here if you're watching this, so hit the stream follow button if you like it. Subscribe if you really like me. Follow me on Twitter as well. Everywhere at MightyTeapot. Very, very easy. Very easy to find. If you guys want to see links to all these guys, it'll be below the stream, actually, and also below the YouTube video as well. So make sure to check out all of those links. And hey, leave us a nice comment there as well, okay? And tell us your thoughts on the discussion here as well. I mean, I'm not even being sarcastic. Sometimes we joke about how people bully us in the YouTube comment section, but this time I'm actually for real here, guys. I think it is super important to actually get conversations going about this topic. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, actually. Overall, here on the stream, I'm going to do a bit of an after show there as well in just a moment. Of course, you know, you guys are welcome to stay for that. But yeah, for now, this is the end of Tea Time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let us know what you think of the conversation. And of course, we'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you later. In the Mist. There you go. There's the Deroy thing there as well. Fantastic stuff. Right. Boom. And now we have the awkward part where I'm still going to keep streaming, but the podcast is over. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so you guys, obviously, you know, fuck off. But no, I'm kidding. You're obviously more than welcome to stay and chat if you want to. But
oh my god, I'm gonna now just
24 hours. Let's go.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So yeah.
This is a show right now, everyone. Keep watching because now it's fucking on.
It's on. Debate. Let's go. But yeah. Obviously, don't let me keep you guys. You're more than welcome to stick around and chat for a little bit, but yeah, I'm going to go and talk about something. In fact, I have a video to sell out for Unchill because it's fine. I have finally made a video about parts of the topics that we were talking about today. The name of the video, guys, is the Guild Wars 2 build swapping saga. Okay, like that's a fun one. Okay, that will be an interesting video. Hopefully, I won't get smushed too much on the subreddit about that. But yeah, we'll be getting into that very, very shortly. But yes, I'm not going. Of course, Jebro is about to stream, guys. That's twitch.tv/Jebro Unity. In the chat, go and check that shit out. Go. Watch the stream as well. Watch both the streams.
In the background.
Yeah, but there you go. Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm going to hop over to the main Hardstuck Discord, and we can continue yelling at each other there if we so desire.